Amid a ruined secret realm, corpses of monsters piled like a mountain, a lone figure stood silently. The scene before him ignited a fierce blaze of anger in his chest. Van Triet squinted, looked down at the one below, and ground his teeth as he snarled. "La Oi, weren't we brothers who'd die for each other? Why would you do this to me?" La Oi just snorted coldly and answered quietly. "Do you still remember the situation when the catastrophe first began? Monsters from bizarre dimensions poured out, destroying everything. Later, people called those spaces secret realms. Anyone who touched a secret realm could gain a mysterious power called an occupation. So they formed occupation legions, conquering the secret realms and advancing like a storm. This time they even breached an SSS-grade secret realm, the most dangerous tier. But because of that, Laoi was forced to eliminate Van Triet, for he had become an uncontrollable threat. Powerful occupation users could easily shatter the Empire's order. And Van Triet, having surpassed SSS rank, was the greatest danger. Supreme power was only allowed to remain in the royal hands to ensure stability. After all, it was just the greed for power and fear of the talented. Hearing this, Van Triet grew even more furious and roared, "So this is why you killed my family and teammates?" For the Empire's stability, Laoi felt no remorse and replied coldly. Van Triet was now swallowed by rage and shouted loudly. Immediately, a surge of energy burst from him. But only 3 seconds later, Van Triet's body was engulfed by an explosion, and he fell to the ground, powerless. Laoi looked at this and sneered with contempt. "I already tampered with your armor. Along with the explosion there's a synthesized toxin that will seep into your wounds." Van Triet, exhausted after the SSS battle, no longer able to resist. Laoi curled his lip in a cold smile. "I even prepared an entire squad. Consider this my gift to you." Van Triet lay on the ground, only able to lift his eyes to look at the traitor. Recalling old days, he sneered, "What brotherhood for life, fake feelings and fake loyalties." At that moment, a hidden skill called Mirror World activated, pulling Van Triet's soul away from the living world. Decades later, by a small pond, a gang of unruly kids were hanging a boy upside down from a tree. The fierce ringleader punched the boy hard in the stomach, cursing non-stop, "Let's see if you enjoy dying like this." He immediately ordered them to drop him again, causing the boy to panic and scream, "I'm not faking." But before he could finish, the boy was pushed under the water. The kids on the bank laughed gleefully, paying no heed to the boy struggling beneath the line between life and death. He didn't understand why he was being treated this way. Just then, a wandering soul suddenly appeared, startled awake by the cries for help. Nearby, a boy with some compassion trembled and said, "If this keeps up, he'll really die." The words made the ringleader startle, then he scoffed coldly, "If he dies for real, just let him use his healing art. Doesn't he have the incantation occupation?" Saying that, he slung his arm over the other boy's shoulder, smirking, "Next is you, you're just as fake." He bluntly accused him of leading them here to trap the victim. If the boy died, wouldn't he be the one to blame? Hearing this, the bespectacled youth trembled as he protested, "I was." Before he could finish, the ringleader cut him off coldly. "Even a punching bag has its own thoughts." Not bad at all. As soon as he finished, he tightened his grip on the bespectacled boy's shoulder, then swung a fist at him. But at that moment, an anomaly surfaced on the pond, startling him. The kids immediately turned around and saw something rising from the water. Seeing it, they screamed in panic, "It's a secret realm. How can there be a secret realm here?" The whole group hurriedly fled. The bespectacled youth was no exception, but after a few steps he looked back, his expression showing a flicker of hesitation. Then, without much thought, he dashed toward the pond to save the boy. The bespectacled youth hurried to the tied boy, but at the same time a monster emerged from the secret realm. He frantically tried to untie the ropes but couldn't. The monster drew closer and closer, and without hesitation attacked them both. In that hair-raising moment, a hand suddenly grabbed the bespectacled boy's collar. The boy who had been tied somehow freed himself and pulled the other aside. Facing the charging monster alone, a small block of ice appeared in his hand, enveloping the monster in a burst of energy. Seeing this, the bespectacled youth shouted in panic, "What are you doing? Why are you healing it?" Immediately after, he tried to use his skills to fend off the monster's attack, while the other youth quickly checked his status. It turned out this boy was also named Van Triet, with the incantation occupation. Recognizing this, Van Triet froze, standing stunned. Wasn't this his original body? It turned out he was Van Triet from decades ago, the one betrayed to death. In principle, anyone who touched a secret realm is bound by the system, receiving an unchangeable starting occupation. Then, through repeated battles in secret realms, they could continuously grow stronger and acquire additional occupations suited to their abilities. Van Triet had once reached the pinnacle as a warrior occupation. Recalling this, perhaps he had used the skill Mirror World, and become trapped there until the cries for help from the namesake boy awakened him. Thanks to that body, Van Triet was reborn. Thinking this, excitement surged in him as he silently thanked fate for granting him a chance at revenge. Lost in thought, a shout cut through, "Van Triet, all the monsters are being drawn here, come help. I can only handle up to 3 at most." Hearing the call, Van Triet glanced over, contemplative. This body was too weak, it couldn't stand against even these small monsters. At their speed, he wouldn't even have a chance to run away, and his skills were of no use. The incantation occupation was truly useless, only supportive abilities, nothing comparable to combat occupations. Because of that, he was always despised and ostracized by those people. Relying on some skill, Van Triet managed to hold out for a while, but he had to find a way to escape this danger. After thinking for a long time, he suddenly noticed the skill Mirror World, perhaps he had to rely on it. But how to use it remained a mystery. There was no more time to hesitate, so he decided to try it on the monster in front of him. The system announced failure, conditions not met. Van Triet frowned slightly. Was it because his rank wasn't high enough, or did it require a mirror like the surface of the lake earlier? Lost in thought, the monster lunged. He hurriedly dodged and tried the Mirror World skill again, but it still failed due to insufficient rank. It seemed this skill really needed a mirror to activate. Stumped on rank for the moment, he decided to change targets. Thinking quickly, Van Triet applied the skill to the small monster's knife. But the result was still a failure. The bespectacled boy next to him screamed in panic, "Don't use those useless support skills anymore, I can't take it much longer." Van Triet didn't bother with them. He glared at the monsters charging forward. Among them was an elite high-rank monster. Seeing this, the bespectacled youth trembled. "We're dead, that elite monster must be at least level 10 to deal with." But as soon as he finished speaking, the air suddenly filled with powerful energy. He stared wide-eyed at the stream of energy dancing in the air. When it dissipated, the scene that appeared made him reel. A horde of monsters as numerous as an army was closing in on both of them. Van Triet grew urgent. He tried using Mirror World on a roadside rock, but the system still reported failure. He frowned, even a rock wouldn't work. Could it really be because his rank was too low? Thinking that, he unconsciously glanced at the trembling bespectacled youth on the ground. He tried applying the skill to Kyo-Chi's simple ability, but the system reported failure again. You cannot reverse another person's skill. Seeing that message, an idea suddenly lit up in Van Triet's mind. If it couldn't be used on others, maybe it could be used on himself. To test it, he tried activating Mirror World on himself. Sure enough, it succeeded. His vine control skill was reversed. Immediately, vines shot up from the ground and pierced through the monsters. Not stopping there, Van Triet used the skill repeatedly, causing the monster attacking Kyo-Chi to suddenly falter. A powerful punch landed, and sent it sprawling. Kyo-Chi stared, bewildered and not understanding what had happened. Van Triet paid no attention to the boy's reaction, lost in thought about Mirror World. Now he understood. The skill completely reverses effects. From constraining a target, it became inducing chaos in the target. That was the true power. Thinking of this, he couldn't help but smile. A skill once deemed useless became miraculous when reversed. What would happen if other skills were reversed? No wonder Mirror World is a hidden SSS rank skill. It not only reverses effects but also amplifies every aspect. If you use the normal binding skill, the success rate is low and the duration lasts only a mere 2 seconds. Certainly nowhere near as effective as now. So what if you reverse other skills? Thinking it through, Van Triet applied Mirror World to the regular blade attack skill, then proceeded to reverse the destructive blade skill as well. In the blink of an eye, a sword appeared in his hand. He curled his lip in a sneer. This skill increases base attack power by 10%, and once activated, all skills are enhanced, offering huge development potential. More surprisingly, Van Triet discovered his rank had jumped from level 3 to level 6. He smiled in satisfaction. Surely the monsters had slaughtered each other, granting him a fair amount of experience. After leveling up, his magic points automatically refilled, enough for him to use the destructive blade. Van Triet quietly activated the chaotic thorn skill, lost in thought. His magic points dwindled, but his attack power surged, reaching 2.2 times normal. This skill broke all conventional rules. Without hesitation, he gripped the blade and charged straight at the monster. His strikes came like lightning. Van Triet swung the sword, slicing a razor-sharp cut across the monster's forearm. Blood gushed like a stream, but he didn't stop, attacking frantically with tsunami-like momentum. Kyo-Chi stood aside, stunned as if turned to stone. Is this really the Van Triet he knew? An incantation occupation possessing such terrifying power. Van Triet paid no mind to his reaction, focusing solely on killing the monster. With level 6 attributes, he recovered 120 magic points per second and his max attack reached 2.3 times normal. Before long, Van Triet defeated the level 10 monster. Standing on its corpse, he wore a triumphant smile. With his current strength, he could handle an elite level 11 monster. At that moment the ground shook violently, an explosion of energy erupted, flinging earth and rock. Van Triet looked up in alarm, only to see a gigantic great devil rise from beneath the ground. As it appeared, the smaller monsters around it scattered in panic, but they couldn't escape its claws. The great devil frantically slaughtered the lesser beasts. Kyo-Chi recoiled in fear, nearly collapsing as he hurried backward. Van Triet remained standing, face grave. This secret realm hides a level 21 boss. Without hesitation, he immediately cast a skill on it. This time it succeeded. The chimera's body was bound by sharp thorns. But in less than 3 seconds the skill failed. It was immune to the chaos status. Breaking free from the chains, the chimera lunged at Van Triet. At that moment, Kyo-Chi suddenly rushed out, creating a protective shield in front of him. Van Triet's eyes flashed through Kyo-Chi's back. He seemed to see a familiar image, a youth whose face resembled Kyo-Chi by 70%, who had once furiously shouted at him in the past, "You idiot, who told you to charge ahead? Why won't you ever listen?" For a moment, Van Triet froze. At the same time, Kyo-Chi couldn't hold on and was sent flying by the chimera. His body slammed hard into the ground, spitting out a mouthful of fresh blood. Van Triet rushed over, silently cursing Kyo-Chi for being reckless. He quickly appeared beside him, trying to heal him. Thanks to his efforts, Kyo-Chi's vitality gradually recovered, but soon his healing skill was exhausted. He muttered in dissatisfaction, "The recovery skill of the incantation occupation is really useless." After that thought, he turned and asked, "Do you have a life potion?" Kyo-Chi nodded slightly. "There's a bottle at the bottom of the basket." Van Triet didn't hesitate, "Then drink it." Then he turned back to face the chimera. With his current power, he was still far from enough to fight this boss. But the monsters had nearly exhausted their health, only a little remained, almost enough to finish them. Thinking that, he glanced at Kyo-Chi and said confidently, "Kyo-Chi, hold on a bit, I'll take care of them." Kyo-Chi was stunned upon hearing this. Before he could comprehend, Van Triet dashed off like the wind, slaughtering frantically. Thus his levels skyrocketed, and his health and magic points fully recovered. But to defeat the boss, he needed to increase his attack power by 400%. While the destructive blade could only be maintained for 1 minute, he had to use chaotic thorns at least 40 times within 50 seconds and reach level 10. While Van Triet displayed his power, Kyo-Chi stood aside, eyes wide and mouth open, astonished by the scene. After finishing off the small monsters, Van Triet lunged at the chimera. By then he had reached level 12, his stats significantly increased, and the destructive blade boosted attack to 510%. Van Triet smiled in satisfaction. He still had enough strength to take it down. No sooner had he finished speaking than he swept past the chimera like wind, and delivered a slash. The blade in his hand danced and twisted, leaving the chimera no time to react, turning it into prey on the chopping block. In the blink of an eye, its body was riddled with wounds. Van Triet delivered the final stroke and returned to Kyo-Chi's side. Kyo-Chi still hadn't recovered, trembling as he mumbled, "Am I not dreaming, right? Could an incantation occupation really clear an entire secret realm by itself?" Van Triet had truly done it. From a low-level incantation occupation a few hours ago, he had now reached level 15. Kyo-Chi stared intently, asking in a trembling voice, "Van Triet, is that really you?" Van Triet didn't answer, busy picking up the dropped items. Kyo-Chi continued, "How did you suddenly get so strong?" After finishing the loot, Van Triet finally turned back to look at Kyo-Chi closely. He found him overly familiar and, hesitating for a long moment, asked, "Kyo-chi, what's your relationship with Kyo-bon-bon?" Kyo-chi froze, replying in panic, "How do you know my great-great-grandfather's nickname?" Van Triet frowned slightly, thinking to himself, "Great-great-grandfather? I didn't expect Kyo-chi to be a descendant of Kyo-bon-bon. That face, how could a descendant not resemble him at all? Weren't all my acquaintances already slaughtered by Laoi?" Thinking that, he suspiciously began to ask more about his great-great-grandfather, but before he finished, Kyo-chi coldly cut him off. "There's no need to talk about him right now." Saying this, he suddenly grew sad. "If you don't want to answer my question, you don't have to say things like that. There's no need to insult me." Van Triet fell into thought. Insult me? What did he mean? Not knowing what he was thinking, Kyo-chi spoke seriously. "Although I don't know why, you've always been hiding your strength. It's time to go back to school. Tomorrow the school is organizing a field trip to the Modern History Museum. Skip it and you're done for." Van Triet heard this and said nothing, inwardly weighing the situation. His identity couldn't be revealed yet. If investigated further, Kyo-chi might become suspicious. Thinking that, he recalled the Modern History Museum Kyo-chi mentioned. Surely that place held information about what happened after his death. The next morning, the group of students boarded the bus to the museum. Van Triet and Kyo-chi, being isolated, chose the back seats. At that moment, he realized the world had changed too much. After all the years since his death, everything had transformed rapidly. This bus was powered by products from secret realms, something he'd never seen before. Some items were strange, others familiar from previous secret realms. But logically, only items dropped by monsters could be taken out of a secret realm. Van Triet quietly touched the chimera bone ring on his hand. Skill books and gear could be taken from storage or even traded outside the secret realm, but those things couldn't be placed into inventory slots, and when the Spirit Lord was killed they would vanish with the realm. Skill books and gear could be taken from storage or even traded outside the secret realm, but those things couldn't be placed into inventory slots, and when the Spirit Lord was defeated they would disappear with the realm. But those things couldn't be placed into inventory slots, and when the Spirit Lord was defeated they would disappear with the realm. Before long, the students arrived at the museum. Van Triet paid no attention to the crowd and walked around silently. In front of the giant monument at the center, he stopped. The guide introduced it as Laoi, the supreme ruler of the empire. But to Van Triet, he was just a despicable traitor. Unaware of his thoughts, the guide continued praising enthusiastically, "I believe many students know that 50 years ago this very place was the battlefield of that famous rebellion. That year, the empire was invaded by a secret realm. Especially after the appearance of the most terrifying SSS-grade realm, everyone lived in fear. According to records, Laoi personally led the occupational forces to conquer that horrific secret realm. Despite suffering heavy losses, at that moment he faced a long-planned rebellion, and the historical accounts name Van Triet as the mastermind." Hearing this, Van Triet's expression darkened and his gaze grew icy. The guide continued enthusiastically, "He was once trusted by the king, but in the end became a traitor, ungrateful and treacherous." The more he listened, the more uncomfortable Van Triet grew. So history had been distorted this far. Clearly he had conquered the SSS-grade secret realm, yet he and his teammates were ambushed by Laoi. The guide continued to criticize, his voice full of indignation, "We cannot imagine the pain of being betrayed in that situation. But our king overcame that pain and kept fighting." He grew more fervent as he spoke, gesturing wildly. From this, Van Triet learned another detail. The traitor who sided with Laoi back then was Din Khan. He frowned, trying to search his memory but couldn't recall Din Khan in the team. At that moment, the kids from before appeared. The leader, Din Huk, sneered, "You lot still alive, huh?" Kyo-chi jumped and looked back, muttering in surprise. The one beside him was also surprised. Could that secret realm have been conquered? If it was just conquered, it means a master was nearby. They're lucky to have shown up at the right time. This drew the crowd's attention. Van Triet narrowed his eyes at them, murderous intent flashing at the corners. Those bastards had gone too far. At this, a few students began to notice Van Triet and Kyo-chi. Two female students looked at Van Triet with strange expressions. Din Huk stepped forward, slung an arm over Kyo-chi's shoulder, and sneered, "Your luck isn't bad, huh? Didn't expect you'd survive and get back out." Kyo-chi broke out in a cold sweat, but Din Huk didn't let up. that day you almost caused us to fall into the secret realm. How are you going to repay that debt? Kyoichi recoiled in fear and retorted, you were clearly the ones at fault. He emphasized that he and Van Triet had nearly died because of them. Hearing this, Dinhuk's face darkened. Hey, what the hell are you thinking? Looks like you have no idea what's going on now. He grabbed Kyoichi's head and pointed to the distant statue, coldly. Look at the statue over there. Your ancestor is being trampled under the feet of the hero-turned-traitor Kyoan. And you, Kyoichi, are a descendant of Kyoan. Dinhuk sneered, asking if anyone would side with Kyoichi. Kyoichi remained silent, but Dinhuk didn't stop. He shouted, you can insult me, but you will not insult my ancestor. Kyoichi froze. The bully was playing the victim. Dinhuk's shout drew the crowd's eyes, whispers spreading. Isn't Dinhuk's ancestor the hero Din Khan? This made Van Triet's expression fall, his gaze turned gloomy. No one knew the truth, there were only rumors and criticisms aimed at Kyoichi. The descendant of the traitor was treated as ignorant and unreasonable. The crowd reacted exactly as Dinhuk intended. He continued his attack. I don't care what you say about me behind my back, but how dare you insult my ancestor to my face? Just then, the guide stepped forward and coldly ordered, Kyoichi, I am a fair man and would like to say a few righteous words. Apologize now. He put on a sanctimonious air, but Kyoichi only looked on silently, not responding. The guide continued to pressure morally. The hero back then forgave your family. Even if you don't repay the favor, you still can't treat people like that. Kyoichi felt plunged into a cold abyss, isolated among the crowd, with no one giving him a chance to defend or explain. Dinhuk stepped forward, his firm hand clamping Kyoichi's head, his voice low and threatening, look, even if I beat you in front of everyone now, the others will just stand and watch. Because no one helps a vicious dog when it's being beaten. Besides, in everyone's eyes, you're an especially disgusting dog. Having said that, Dinhuk angrily grabbed Kyoichi's hair, snorting with contempt, do you still think the descendant of a hero like me could be wrong? He hid a triumphant smile behind a look of outraged insult. Dinhuk raised his fist and roared, for the honor of my ancestor, I will never forgive this. But before he finished, a sudden kick landed squarely on his face, sending his whole body flying out, collapsing like a stray dog. Kyoichi stood stunned, witnessing everything, unable to speak. The one who struck was Van Triet. He stood tall with an arrogant air, snorting coldly, a heroic family and this uncouth. The crowd immediately murmured when they recognized him. Van Triet? Why does he seem different? Everyone was shocked that he dared to lay hands on Dinhuk. Most assumed he had lost his mind, daring to insult a heroic family. These students always feared the Din family's power, no one dared oppose Dinhuk. Even Dinhuk himself didn't expect the day he'd be struck back by Van Triet. He scrambled up, wiped the blood from his mouth, grinding out, it was just a sandbag, you should thank me for not throwing you out. Yet you dared strike while I wasn't looking. No sooner had he finished than his lackeys rushed forward, intending to gang up on Van Triet. But to him, they were merely dogs relying on their clan, bullies who preyed on the weak. In no time, the whole group was defeated by him, rolling on the ground like stray dogs. Dinhuk was also kicked away, kneeling on the ground, blood continuously spouting from his mouth. The crowd was thrown into panic. While Dinhuk stared in horror, his brows knit. He had been beaten to the point of unable to fight back. As people gradually calmed, whispers rose again, see? One shove and he falls. Is Dinhuk really that weak? Those words were like knives to Dinhuk's pride. He exploded, gritting his teeth and shouting, a worthless level 5 support, how could he suddenly be stronger than me? It must be luck. In a fit of rage, Dinhuk cowardly pulled out a weapon and attacked Van Triet. But Van Triet only sneered disdainfully, too careless. No sooner had he spoken than Van Triet darted forward like the wind, delivering a punch that made Dinhuk spit blood all over his mouth. Not stopping there, he followed with a kick, forcing him flat on the ground. At that moment, the museum security finally appeared, pushing the students aside and shouting, what's going on here? What are you kids doing? When they entered, they saw Van Triet stomping on Dinhuk. The surrounding students panicked seeking help, but no one dared step forward. Everyone remained stunned, gossiping wildly, unable to react in time to help. At the same time, 2 female students stared blankly at the scene, their eyes fixed on Van Triet. When the guards regained their composure, they began to scold the guide. No fighting in the museum, what if something gets damaged? Why aren't you supervising your students? Hearing this, the guide approached Van Triet and spoke in a phony righteous tone. Insulting a hero wasn't enough, you even dared to knock out a hero's descendant. Shameless. While speaking, the old man drew his weapon, intending to attack the student. So who is really shameless? Van Triet did not yield to that immoral old man. The ring on his finger flashed with energy, and in an instant it exploded, shattering the guide's weapon and leaving him stunned. The crowd outside was equally bewildered. Van Triet snorted coldly, his voice like a blade, "First of all, let's not talk about shame. You call yourself fair, yet you take Din Huk's one-sided word. Are you going to act like a dog licking his clan's boots?" These words twisted the guide's face. He screamed madly, "Don't lie, how could I?" But before he finished, he noticed the ring on Van Triet's hand. What kind of equipment is that? Even without using full power, Van Triet had blocked his strike. Van Triet didn't relent, his cold eyes demanding, "So you just say whatever you like? A teacher like you shouldn't be this kind of person, right?" The guide bit his lip, his voice dropping reluctantly, "Of course, I'll investigate the cause of the conflict properly." Van Triet was too lazy to pay heed to the old man's boasting and looked down at the ring on his hand. Though rare, it was ultimately just gear from a level 21 spirit beast. Against a level 35 teacher, it still felt a bit awkward. Thinking that, he waved his hand and said decisively, "Then as punishment, just expel us." Before the guide could reply, he turned to Kyochi. "Kyochi, let's go." Kyochi didn't want to get involved with people who changed with the wind. He hurried after Van Triet, ignoring the whispers behind them. At that moment, the guide suddenly remembered Din Huk and panicked. "Quick, use healing techniques to save Din Huk." Outside, Van Triet strode away without bothering to look back. What's there to see in a place that records history written by a traitor? But he had confirmed one important thing, indeed no one had survived. Even Kyo Van had been killed by the man who claimed to be a hero. Thinking this, he glanced at Kyo-chi worshipping behind him. If asked now, he'd answer without hesitation. He cleared his throat twice and said, "I'm not well versed in history. Tell me the specific actions of the hero Din Khan." Kyo-chi froze, then hurriedly replied, Hero Din Khan. I'm not sure I remember correctly. It was him. At first he seemed to have foreseen the villain Van Triet's scheme and ambushed near the SSS-grade secret realm to provide support. Thanks to that, the risk of rebellion was extinguished. Van Triet listened, his brow slightly furrowing. Ambushed near the secret realm. At that time he hadn't noticed anything suspicious. Being preoccupied with killing monsters, only realizing it when he was stabbed from behind. Unfortunately it was too late, all of his people were killed. Unaware that he was sinking into memory, Kyo-chi continued, Hero Din Khan had pledged since childhood to handle secret realm threats and train diligently. After being appointed by the king, he traveled everywhere to provide aid to regions, such as the great disaster at Tuong Dong Tan, for example. Van Triet sneered, Tuong Dong Tan, wasn't it you who actually put an end to that catastrophe? Indeed, history is written by the victors. Biting his lip in fury, he asked in a low voice, what about that sword? The one in the statue's hand. Kyo-chi knew he meant the Lu Van sword and replied seriously, I heard that's the sword he used to behead the traitor Van Triet, it's supposedly the top-tier weapon. Van Triet's face was now filled with rage. Good, not only did they steal his honor, but they even claimed his sword. If Din Khan benefited from what Van Triet created, he'd make him meet his squad first. A few watches later, at the Din family mansion, countless high-level guards patrolled outside. As they walked, something caught their attention, and when they turned they saw two figures slipping into a nearby alley. Sensing no threat, they turned and resumed their patrol, unaware that Van Triet was hiding behind a wall, brow furrowed, thinking, so alert. A drifter with scouting skills. Beside him Kyo-chi pounded his chest in fear and whispered, I told you, we should leave. The guards are thick here, if Din Huk returns, we're dead. Van Triet said nothing, lost in thought. Although he always wanted to kill Din Khan, according to Kyo-chi, he'd long been hiding in a high-level secret realm. Now, unlike his previous life, Van Triet couldn't freely enter secret realms, and high-level secret realms were guarded by armies. Entry required a pass. But Din Huk's household definitely had one. He glanced at Kyo-chi and said, why do they need so many bodyguards? Isn't he just one among dozens of Din Khan's descendants? Kyo-chi sighed and replied, still, they're descendants of a hero, and they have a private secret realm in the house. A private secret realm? Van Triet widened his eyes in surprise. Kyo-chi nodded, annoyed. Low-level secret realms are now all bought by private interests. Without power, who dares to buy them? Din Huk always has guards, so he can always kill monsters to level up. But ordinary students entering the school's secret realm still get robbed. Hearing this, Van Triet couldn't help but scoff. The world has truly turned upside down. More money and power means higher levels. Kyo-chi nodded. Exactly. Ordinary high school graduates reach level 15 to 20. After graduation, without access to secret realms, they stagnate at that level. Those who work with secret realms, like keymasters or rangers at national secret realms, might reach around level 30 by middle age. The guards at Din Huk's place, thanks to his secret realm, can reach about level 30. To reach higher levels, only those recruited into the military or organizations like unions or military academies can enter high-level secret realms and attain greater levels. Van Triet sighed. To get stronger, a pass is indispensable. While he pondered, Kyo-chi urged again, we should go. The level gap is too big, no matter how good you are, you can't fight the guards. Van Triet silently moved forward, his eyes resolute. Despite his current strength, he still wanted to take down the so-called hero Din Khan. Yes, with his present power he was far from ready, let alone facing La Oi's layered henchmen, but it wasn't impossible. He said calmly, scouting skills are usually learned at level 30, but most are small-range abilities like Hawkeye, enhanced hearing, or summoning spirit rats. They're not enough to cover the entire area around a house at all times. This isn't a life-or-death secret realm, so the guards will mostly be lax. Sneaking in isn't impossible. Kyo-chi, alarmed, asked, lax, where exactly is lax? Van Triet only smiled faintly, said nothing, then sprang up the wall. Compared to scouting blind spots in high-level secret realms in his past life, this was as easy as turning his hand. Kyo-chi below kept advising, even if we sneak in, this is a private secret realm, if we're killed, no one will care. Why risk it? But before he finished, Van Triet had already grabbed him up like a chicken. He raised an eyebrow and asked, Kyo-chi, don't you want to change your life? Kyo-chi froze at the question, then sighed, of course I do, but only if I can get into a guild. Before he could finish, Van Triet cut in coldly, will joining a guild really change things? You're the grandson of the traitor Kyoan, after all. Kyo-chi was left speechless, wanting to rebut but not knowing what to say. Van Triet looked at his face, sighed, and spoke sternly. Your fate can only be changed by actions in the present. Isn't leaving the past behind the way forward? With that, he threw Kyo-chi down. Coldly, decide for yourself whether you come with me. Van Triet waited silently, wanting to see what the descendant of his past comrade would choose. Kyo-chi pondered, then stood and followed. He didn't want Van Triet to face danger alone. The two crept along the wall, silently moving deeper inside. After a short while, Van Triet whispered in a low voice, there are no traces of summoning-type scouting skills here. As long as we stay silent, we can remain out of sight. With that in mind, he carried Kyo-chi and lightly hopped away, deftly avoiding the patrols. In an instant, they had slipped into the Din mansion. Suddenly Kyo-chi exclaimed in surprise, that's an underground secret realm. Sure enough, before them was the door leading into the secret realm. The two rushed in. This secret realm was a bit higher level than before, but monsters were sparse because Din Huk's household regularly cleaned it out. Only 2 small monsters remained. Van Triet signaled to Kyo-chi, you go try over there. Kyo-chi panicked, me fight? Definitely not. But under Van Triet's urging, he still leapt out, attacking with his shield while shouting, I'd be crazy to trust you. No sooner had he spoken than a monster lunged at his face, making him shout, if I'd known, I wouldn't have come, I want to go home. He raised his shield to block, only defending and not attacking. Van Triet stood outside calmly and prompted, why not try fighting back? Kyo-chi hurriedly replied, how would I have a chance to counter? Van Triet said calmly, yes, you do, I'm here, it'll be fine. Kyo-chi fell silent for a moment after hearing that, then tried to strike back. He indeed took down one, but the remaining one seized the chance to attack from behind. Kyo-chi quickly dodged, avoiding taking damage. Van Triet watched, inwardly admiring. The boy's talent wasn't bad, only overly timid, only daring to defend. But Kyo-chi's spatial positional judgment was extremely accurate, always evading danger without a scratch. Many people stop simply for lack of courage to try. Kyo Van's descendant had taken his first steps. Thinking that, Van Triet lunged forward, helping Kyo-chi eliminate the remaining monsters. Only then did Kyo-chi have time to check the info board. He exclaimed in shock, "I leveled up." Van Triet narrowed his eyes and said in a low voice, "Experience points are divided by contribution. If you don't disrupt their moves, even if I kill them, you won't get much." But he thought to himself that Kyo-chi's movements were overly agile. He asked, "How did you allocate your attribute points?" Kyo-chi answered immediately, "Aside from spirit power, I spread points evenly." Van Triet frowned, "You carry a shield, shouldn't you not bother raising agility?" Kyo-chi sighed, "If I don't, it's hard to find a party at school. No one wants to wait for a slow shield bearer. Monsters get stolen by others." Van Triet, understanding everything, advised in a low tone, "You should look further ahead. After level 60, when advancing job tiers, attribute requirements are very strict. For example, the Fortress Artillery job requires 60 stamina and 90 defense points. You can't just dump points randomly." Kyo-chi couldn't help but retort, "An ordinary person might reach level 40 in a lifetime. Who dares dream of level 60? That's S rank." But before he finished, Van Triet placed a hand on his shoulder. His gaze firm, "From now on, you must aim for S rank, even surpass S rank." Those words froze Kyo-chi, he couldn't utter a word. Still, Van Triet began calculating his own job advancement. As a support, he could only rely on the hidden skill, Mirror World, to turn the tide. Barring surprises, he would head down this path. But just then he discovered that Mirror World could be upgraded. Without hesitation, the two began slashing through monsters in the secret realm. With the small monsters, Van Triet dispatched them as easily as turning his hand. But the problem was the higher-level monster before them. His burst blade could only last 5 seconds. And despite frenzied slashing, it still had some health left. The boosted attack power faded quickly, and the corpse-like beast still hadn't fallen. As he swung his blade, Van Triet thought, "This skill is powerful but can't sustain long fights." His stamina had limits. Although his leveling speed had far outpaced normal people, he was now level 17, and killing monsters still accumulated experience for Mirror World. While lost in thought, he suddenly sensed danger. Like a lightning bolt, he leaped onto a nearby cliff wall. At the same time, the Din household's patrol force swelled. Kyo-chi hurriedly said, "Monsters are getting fewer now. If we keep going, the risk will only increase." Van Triet knew he was right. Fighting monsters while watching for the guard's scouting skills and managing the burst blade's duration was too forced for him now. Moreover, the new skill book that dropped showed not every reversal skill aids in combat. Mirror World was still 30% short of leveling up. At rank 1 the reversal skill was already absurdly powerful. Leveling up would surely make it stronger. Following the cliff wall, Van Triet walked and pondered. Summon spirit rats, summon hawk cat. The scouting skills here grew more advanced. Passing a rocky nook, he suddenly stopped. Before him stood the secret realm's lord chained to a large chair, surrounded by guards. Kyo-chi poked his head out, astonished. "The lord is restrained? It's the first time I've seen this. At school, the lord is watched by teachers and no one is allowed near. That chain must be high-grade equipment." Van Triet fell silent. With so many guards, if he struck the lord they'd surely summon more. At his current level he couldn't kill the lord amid the encirclement. The guards had to be dealt with first. No sooner thought than done. Van Triet lunged like lightning, and a single move crippled one guard. He said coldly, "Next, spill all the information, and you'd better be honest." The guard offered no resistance and blurted out, "Please, ask anything and I'll tell. The Din household pays poorly. It's not worth risking my life." Van Triet was briefly speechless, thinking there were even guards like this. Still, fine, straight to the point. He asked, "Where are the hero secret realm passage permits?" The guard, surprised, "Passage permits? There's a stack in the Patriarch's study, they're not rare." "You're a fan of Din Khan, is that why you're so worked up?" he cried in fear, hurriedly adding, really, I've seen it a few times. The permits are in the Patriarch's study. Seeing Van Triet's grim expression, he panicked and repeated, really, I've seen it a few times. The permits are in the Patriarch's study. He's leading the captain of the guards out, but those are temporary cards, personal information hasn't been entered. Without someone vouching, you'll certainly be interrogated. No sooner had he finished than Van Triet grabbed him by the collar and hissed icily, that's none of your concern. First, empty the contents of your system backpack. After a while, Van Triet and Kyochi left the secret realm, leading the guard with them. As they walked, Van Triet turned and asked suspiciously, the spell skill book on you, there's really only one? The guard nodded emphatically, I truly don't have more. He sighed and explained, the Din are stingy. Anything found in the secret realm must be handed up, we only get a few leftover scraps. Van Triet paid it no mind and casually flipped the skill book open. Inside was a record of the skill, Baptizing Light, which when reversed becomes Moonflower Descent, able to heal and increase defense by 6% for 15 seconds. Before long they reached an area crowded with guards. One hurriedly said, that's the Din inner courtyard. Without a summons, our guards aren't allowed to enter. Van Triet narrowed his eyes, his cold gaze sweeping the man. He went on, only people level 30 and above come and go, all with top-tier gear. Honestly, there's not much need for protection. Van Triet smirked slightly and asked skeptically, so if we get inside, we can grab the permits, right? The guard shook his head desperately, no. The main owner is there, level 42, you definitely couldn't beat him. He added, the second and third masters are both over level 50 and are currently out working. If they return at the wrong moment, you'll be in even more danger. Van Triet frowned, thinking. Entering the inner courtyard meant facing an owner far stronger than him. After a moment's hesitation, he suddenly struck the guard unconscious, glanced at Kyochi and said, you stay here. The abrupt command left Kyochi momentarily flustered. Without further explanation, Van Triet quietly returned to the secret realm where the Lord was imprisoned. He knew they used high-grade iron chains to restrain the beast. Unless the Lord died, the secret realm would not disappear. Therefore, the Din family always posted strict guards. This method was thorough, but only effective so long as no one dared break the lock. And now, Van Triet was exactly the one willing to do that. Like a ghost passing through the night, Van Triet moved and swiftly took down a guard. The commotion immediately stirred the surrounding soldiers, but he didn't stop. He charged in and shattered the iron chains restraining the realm lord. This bold move was meant to lure the Patriarch out of the inner courtyard, audacious but highly effective. When the chains snapped, the Lord roared and thrashed violently, throwing the area into chaos. Outside the secret realm, upon receiving the report, the Din Patriarch rushed over with his retinue, shouting, stop dawdling, enter the secret realm and reinforce. In the distance, Kyochi watched the entire scene. Meanwhile, inside, Van Triet had seized a level 60 chain. Their coordinated act played out like a dramatic scene, paving the way for him to infiltrate the inner courtyard easily. At the same time, in the Din family's main yard, 2 cars were parked at the main gate. Servants hurried out, cheerfully opening the doors to welcome the second master and the young master back. The one who stepped down was Din Hao, the second master, followed by Din Huck. Din Huck asked as they walked, is something serious going on that father came to pick me up? Din Hao replied coldly, picking you up was just on the way. Meanwhile, another car door opened. A servant bowed and smiled politely, Miss Van Sa, please alight from the carriage. They were 2 classmates of Van Triet. As they stepped down, another servant bowed and said, welcome to the exiles' quarters. The remark made the Din steward frown. Without another word, he immediately kicked the man who had spoken. Leaving the man sprawled on the ground, Din Hao led Van Sa and the others into the main house. From afar, Kyochi had observed everything. While still hesitating, Van Triet suddenly appeared. He nonchalantly asked, you saw the Din family return and didn't dare go in, right? His voice startled Kyochi. Seeing the reaction, Van Triet frowned, what's with that expression? Kyochi said nothing, only glanced at him and shot back, how did you get over there so fast? Van Triet shrugged and replied calmly, after all, that's the secret realm lord. Even at level 30, it's not easy to imprison. They can't subdue it again within half an hour. Having said that, he returned to the original question, so what did you see? Kyo-chi looked off into the distance, hesitated for a long moment, then answered, that person is my young master. Kyo-lu. Hearing that name, Van Triet fell into silence. Kyo-chi continued, at first, when Van Triet rebelled, his entire clan was wiped out, but even so, they didn't deserve the insults hurled at them. Hearing those words, Van Triet's expression grew darker, his gaze sinking like an abyss. Kyo-chi went on, voice full of bitterness, you don't know how terrible the repercussions were. The Kyo family continuously suffered malice from the empire. Under Din Khan's calculated leadership, the situation only worsened. In the end, the Kyo family became servants to the Din family, sometimes paraded out so they could flaunt their power and so-called benevolence. He sighed, for the Kyo family to survive, they had no choice but to bow their heads, always scheming and living hand-to-mouth like a candle in the wind. My parents once wanted to change things, but the result was my father went mad and became insane. As for my uncle, Kyo-lu, he completely turned into the Din family's loyal dog. Van Triet heard this tragic story and was momentarily speechless. After a long silence, he suddenly stepped past Kyo-chi, voice stern, I'm going into the house. Kyo-chi startled out of his pain, hurriedly warned, right now Father Din Huk is there, level 42, fully decked in top-tier gear. If you're discovered, you're dead for sure. Van Triet's expression didn't change, he replied coldly, in an age where secret realms are controlled like this, without taking risks there's no hope for change. There are things that, if you hesitate, you'll never achieve. Having said that, he glanced at Kyo-chi sincerely, I can help you change, but first you must make the choice yourself. I'll fight, but I won't force you to follow. Kyo-chi panicked, but the opponent is a massively powerful noble family, can we really fight back? Van Triet left only one sentence, what I want to confront is the entire empire. Then like the wind, he disappeared. Kyo-chi was left standing, still unable to process that bold declaration. Van Triet's destination was the Din family's villa. In the drawing room, Din Hao sat on the sofa sipping tea and casually asked a servant, how did the secret realm lord break free of the chains? The servant stammered, only managing an unsure how to answer. Opposite, Van Jia spoke with concern, is something inconvenient, sir? We can visit another day if needed. Din Hao smiled and shook his head, no need, eldest brother. He can handle it, it's just a small secret realm, how is that more important than Miss Van Sa? Moreover, after learning she arrived, Father Din Huk and third uncle are already on their way back, this is easily manageable. He added, I've also contacted the AG family's hero. He very much wants to meet her. On the second floor corridor, a figure hid silently, that was Van Triet. Hearing Din Hao mention Din Khan, he fell into thought. To enter a hero's secret realm you need a passage permit and someone to escort you. It seemed Van Sa, the girl who shared his surname, held a position far from ordinary. Thinking that, Van Triet quickly left, focusing on finding the passage permit first. Fortunately, he avoided the scrutinizing gaze of the person beside Van Sa. Going up to the second floor, Van Triet deftly avoided two maids, and slipped into a room. He moved carefully, afraid of bumping into anyone. Luckily, the room was empty. At the same time in the Din family's main yard, Din Gak led people back from the secret realm, muttering angrily, finally restrained the realm lord. Clearly someone intentionally released it, but now there's no sign of anyone. Suspecting something, Din Gak shouted and ordered the villa to be surrounded. He knew Van Sa was a guest and could not allow any lapse to disturb her. In the room, Van Triet rifled through everything but couldn't find the passage permit. Frustrated, he activated his illusion skill, and finally discovered a suspicious drawer. Opening it, he found a diary. Flipping it open, underneath were a number of high-quality skill books. Outside the Din gate, guards swarmed in, surrounding the place completely. Kyo-chi hid far away, heart pounding. Why are all the guards gathering here? The more he thought, the more anxious he became. He feared that if Van Triet didn't escape in time, both of them would be done for. If captured, the painful memories from the past would repeat. He intended to quietly withdraw, to preserve his life, but Van Triet's words suddenly ringing in his head gave him pause. Suddenly, Kyo-chi shouted loudly, drawing everyone's attention. The guards immediately located him, and charged in pursuit. He ran for his life, hoping to draw attention and create a chance for Van Triet to escape. At that moment, Van Triet burst through the door and immediately noticed Kyo-chi's action. He smiled, eyes flashing with admiration. Kyo-chi had overcome his fear and chosen to fight. With a bold glint in his eyes, Van Triet suddenly shouted, "Attract everyone's attention, the chains and skill books are with me. If you have the guts, come and take them." Immediately, the guards shifted their target from Kyo-chi to him, but Van Triet showed no sign of flinching. He activated a slowing light skill, causing everyone within a 20 m radius to move 20% slower. Like a whirlwind, he lunged forward, while reversing the light acceleration skill, boosting his own speed by another 30%. Seeing Van Triet running toward the secret realm, Din Gak immediately roared, "Team 2, Team 3, return at once to protect the realm lord." He hesitated and did not give chase right away. Kyo-chi, still hiding, also noticed Van Triet's odd behavior. He wondered why Van Triet had led the guards back that way. Van Triet's thinking was razor-sharp. With the guards drawn outside, the realm lord must have been restrained. If so, it would be in its weakest state. If he could kill the realm lord, the mirror world would level up. Such a golden opportunity, how could he pass it up? At the same time inside the Din Villa, a somber atmosphere descended on the drawing room. Van Jia couldn't help but break the silence. "The disturbance outside isn't small, Uncle really doesn't need to stay here to receive us." Din Hao smirked slightly, "It's just a petty thief, elder brother can handle it." Outside, the scene was chaotic like a smashed beehive. Din Gak bellowed, "Don't block me, you lot are as slow as turtles, rush to the realm lord." He ordered the marksman and Lang Bat to chase the intruder, who was Van Triet. With half his skill points invested in agility, and the acceleration from a level 30 skill, only the marksman and Lang Bat could keep up with him. Din Gak was no fool, but unfortunately still allowed Van Triet to reach the realm lord. The fact the lord was sealed here was its greatest weakness, and Van Triet was determined to exploit it. If he concentrated all his strength, he could take it down immediately. Without hesitation, he plunged down. The soldiers below instantly became alert and formed an attack formation. But Van Triet calmly unleashed his chaotic spiked skill. The floating spikes in the air turned the guards' faces pale. A scoffing voice said, "This is a skill that causes abnormal status. Humans aren't as easy to hit as monsters." No sooner had the words finished than an explosion rang out and one man took the hit. The soldiers panicked. Someone shouted, "Impossible. The abnormal proc rate of this skill is way too high." Ignoring the chaos, Van Triet pierced through the encirclement. The more crowded it became, the easier it was for him to reach the realm lord, who was low on health. Indeed, his bold action shattered the enemy formation. Van Triet sneered inwardly, "What a ragtag bunch, completely lacking combat experience. Has peace dulled their fighting skills?" He charged at the final layer of defense. The soldiers snarled at him, trying to hold the line. But Van Triet remained unflinching, unleashing a formation-breaking move and charging straight ahead. Just then, Din Gak appeared, shouting angrily, "Hold the formation, let me deal with him." He donned his armor, swinging a great axe wreathed in fiery flames toward him. Van Triet glanced over, eyes mocking, "Come on then." He snorted coldly, "That works for me." Then unexpectedly he pulled out the level 60 iron chain he'd just seized. Although he wasn't high enough level to use it, he still took advantage of its sturdiness. Van Triet hurled the iron chain straight into Din Gak's flaming axe, using the impact to break the seal. Unaware of the plot, Din Gak focused all his force on attacking the chain. Seizing the opportunity, Van Triet rushed to the realm lord and raised an eyebrow triumphantly. "Thanks for the assist." Din Gak realized the scheme and roared in fury, "You dare." Van Triet scoffed, "Too bad, I actually do." He drove a fatal strike into the realm lord. With its scant remaining blood, the beast collapsed instantly. As a result, Van Triet leaped 3 levels, reaching level 20 and his stats soared. And the mirror world leveled up as well. Din Gak's face turned various shades between pale and flushed, furious to the extreme. But Van Triet paid him no mind and ignored the soldiers charging at him. He opened the system panel and activated the new level 2 mirror world skill. Just as the soldiers attacked, when they looked back, there was no one standing before them. An invisible shell surrounded them, making everyone seem frozen. Van Triet stared in astonishment at the system text, wandering in the mirror, time remaining 29 minutes 51 seconds. He tried to sweep his hand through a figure, but it dissolved like wind. No wonder reality felt distorted, these beings were just illusions. He bent down and picked up a stone from the ground. Strangely, it did not vanish. An information panel popped up. The the stone in the mirror can be collected and taken out. Van Triet was astonished. It's not an illusion but can be removed. The stone emitted a strange blue aura, though its purpose remained mysterious. He thought to himself that once the skill reached level 2, he could enter the mirror world and retrieve items to bring out. After considering it, Van Triet decided to store the item, planning to slowly investigate whether the system would change further. Immediately, the system panel displayed a long, endless list. Skills like illusion art, inactive, invisibility art, inactive, lost dance art, inactive, poison nail, inactive, chaotic spines, gravity prison cage, inactive, radiant armor shell, inactive, soul absorption, inactive, law-breaking blade that clears controls, inactive, and gloom art, inactive, appeared in sequence. Scrolling through the barrage of information, Van Triet frowned, thinking to himself that all these skills were still inactive. When he touched one on the panel, the system immediately notified him that the inherent skill had not been learned. Van Triet pondered, inherent skill, it seems what's displayed here are reversed versions of the skills. Perhaps you must learn the inherent skill in reality first before it can be activated. He realized the level 1 reverse skill was only a trimmed portion of the level 2 function. Running his hand over the skill list, Van Triet muttered, so I can choose a powerful skill combo to learn first, I need to plan my progression path right away. Just then, a piercing cold current suddenly swept in from behind, like a drifting wind but enough to make him shiver. Van Triet turned around and astonishedly found a host of blurred figures, like thin smoke, appearing behind him. He exclaimed, souls. Other souls can exist here too. Not only that, they were unlike ordinary spirits. Vengeful energy billowed from them, transforming into fierce, desiccated skeletons that lunged straight at him. Without hesitation, Van Triet drew his blade, stepped back, and took a ready stance. In the blink of an eye, he became a warrior like a soul monster. Swinging the blade, he released dazzling purple arcs of light, slashing directly at the soul fiend. With a single move, it dissolved instantly. Seems not very strong, he muttered. Immediately afterward, a familiar mechanical sound rang in his ear, startling him. The system announced, Death Soul Contract. You can sign a contract with a soul. After signing, you can bring it out of the mirror world to fight for you. Contracts, 0/20. Van Triet frowned and thought, contract, so after defeating a death soul, I can tame it as a summon and bring it out. Not only stones, the level 2 mirror world also seemed to allow bringing death souls into reality. The more he thought about it, the more excited he became. Looking up at the death souls circling in the air, he murmured, how intriguing. At the same time in the real world, the crowd still swarmed like ants, but no one could find any trace of Van Triet. They buzzed, the secret realm vanished, why hasn't that guy appeared? How could he disappear like thin air? Could this be Lang Bat's hidden skill? A purple-haired man waved his knife and replied, no way, their hidden skills have physical form and duration, so it wouldn't be like that. Before he finished, another man, furious, rushed over, grabbed him by the collar and snarled, then you tell me. How could so many of us still let him get away? While the other man was still shouting, Van Triet unexpectedly reappeared. Both of them were startled, eyes wide, not understanding what had happened. Unconcerned with them, he stood there scanning the system panel and muttered, has the mirror roaming time expired? When exiting, do you return to the same spot? Or are there other conditions? The man screamed at him like a madman, but Van Triet had anticipated the situation. He calmly raised his hand to his chest, one iris flashed green as he cut him off, hold on. After being besieged so long, I should have a little gift in return. With that, Van Triet summoned a host of contracted death souls from the mirror world. They, like bloodthirsty monsters, lunged at the crowd with ferocious momentum. He smiled, taste my legion of death souls. At the sight, the crowd recoiled in panic, crying out in terror, what is that? Is it a demon? Din Gak's anger flared, his eyes cold and fierce as he growled, don't panic. They're just death soul monsters, I've seen plenty of them. Hearing that, a man in the group mustered his courage, shut his eyes, and charged at a death soul. But when he opened his eyes, he was surprised to find himself unharmed. The monster wasn't as fearsome as he'd imagined. He laughed loudly, feigning confidence, told you not to panic. The system displayed the status, Drybone Death Soul Level 20, HP 1370/1370, MP 140/140. Now the crowd had shaken off their fear and felt reinvigorated. They surged forward to counterattack, shouting, "Capture it and everyone gets a raise." After a bout of fighting and wiping out the Death Souls, they suddenly realized Van Triet had vanished. His figure seemed to dissolve into thin air. Where did that guy go? They panicked. It turned out that while the crowd was still occupied with fighting, Van Triet had quietly slipped away without anyone noticing. He privately judged these Death Souls to be too low level. To stop these people, he needed to capture higher tier, more powerful Death Souls. If he obtained elite Death Souls, that ragtag lot would be no match. But in the mirror world, the 20 strongest Death Souls he could contract were already taken. He recalled that while in the mirror world the system had announced, "You have reached the search boundary." The mirror world has a search limit. Once entered, your action range is only 200 meters. Van Triet frowned, feeling a throbbing in his head. He had to find an opportunity to explore other areas of the mirror world to see if he could hunt higher tier Death Souls. While thinking, he suddenly noticed two figures lurking under dense trees in the distance. One young man was lifted into the air by someone choking him. The captor snarled, "You think you can run? You think I'll let you go? Capture you, who knows what reward we'll get." Before the man could finish, Van Triet rushed over and slashed across with his blade. The attacker had no time to react and was cut in two. The young man lost his balance and tumbled to the ground. While he was still dazed and hadn't understood what happened, Van Triet grabbed his collar and dragged him along, saying calmly, "Let's go. They're all in chaos, let's head back and check our loot." Over with Din Gak's group, the situation was a complete mess. Somehow the Death Souls had revived, throwing everyone into confusion. Blows were struck decisively, slaying Death Souls without any real difficulty. One man thrust his thin sword into a Death Soul's head and called out, "The dry-bone Death Soul is dead." But then, to their horror, the Death Soul reassembled its body and stood up as if nothing had happened. The system displayed, Dry-bone Death Soul level 20, HP 1370/1370, MP 140/140. The crowd stood stunned, whispering, "How can it die and come back to life?" Before they could recover, a burst of eerie red energy tore through the space, obliterating 4 Death Souls in an instant. A man walked forward slowly, sighed, and with a sneer said, "These are all summoned creatures. Even if they revive, it will drain magic points, just kill them a few more times and they're done." He was Din Kwa, level 52, third housemaster of the Din family, wielding immense authority. The scene cut to the Din residence. A man bowed deeply, his voice trembling, "I'm sorry, father, I couldn't keep her." In reality, the intruder had been too brazen. He not only escaped but smashed a window in the house. Hearing this, the white-haired man snorted coldly, "The intruder even got inside the house. Not only did you fail to catch him, you don't even know what he looks like. Is this how you do your job?" He was Din Dan, level 57, son of the hero Din Khan and the lord of the Din family. He didn't dare argue and took all the blame, "It's my fault for not doing my job well." But he looked up and added, "Miss Van Sa agreed to go to the hero's secret realm, so House A will have no problems." Still, Din Dan was dissatisfied, his cold gaze swept elsewhere as he snorted, "Find that person and kill him." He turned to the window and waved his hand in command, "Quick, check if anything else was stolen." Back with Van Triet, he held an anonymous passcard. His eyes thoughtful, thinking, passcard, though he had obtained it, he still needed someone to lead him into the hero's secret realm. This matter could wait. The system displayed, Van Triet level 20, HP 720/720, MP 140/140. At Din Huck's place this time, he had reached level 20. Even though the Chimera ring was 94% damaged, he still managed to take more than a dozen skill books hidden in his house. From the storage space, Van Triet pulled out a shimmering green book. He learned, Battle Chant Incantation, costs 40 MP, lasts 60 seconds, increases critical rate by 8%, critical damage by 15%, and reduces defense by 20%. Reverse Shield Chant Incantation, costs 40 MP, lasts 60 seconds, decreases critical rate by 12%, reduces incoming critical damage by 23%, and increases defense by 30%. He calculated silently that this reverse support skill could boost his attributes. Then, relying on stats alone would be enough to crush same-level opponents. The system announced the passive skill, Battle Force Boost, permanent. Additional power from the rare level, 30, Rotten Knight Armor, -3 Spirit, plus 900 Physical Defense, plus 1500 Magic Defense. Previously, the domain leader had also dropped an equipment piece that could be used later. More importantly, the Mirror World had leveled up. The Mirror World's ultimate skill can reverse anything. At level 2, the combat power of summoned death souls had increased significantly, but it was still insufficient. Judging by the equipment style on the hero statue, Van Triet guessed the hero belonged to the S-rank branch of the Berserker profession. To kill him, he would need death souls of the same rank at level 50 or above. Lost in thought, Van Triet suddenly heard Kyo-Chi beside him ask worriedly, "Van Triet, they won't be able to follow us, right?" He smiled faintly and glanced over to reassure him, "Don't worry, I've shaken them off, and our identities weren't revealed." Even reassured, Kyo-Chi remained uneasy, fidgeting as he replied softly, Seeing him, Van Triet understood the feeling. Still worried? Hard to blame him at this age. Thinking that, he quietly called, "Kyo-Chi, are there any secret realms recently where powerful experts died?" Kyo-Chi asked in surprise, "A secret realm where a powerful expert died?" Van Triet nodded, "Yes. I want to find a higher tier secret realm to level up. As for the powerful expert, you'll know when the time comes." Kyo-Chi pondered, trying to recall, then said, "If we're talking about a secret realm where a powerful expert died, there is indeed one. But that's the school's secret realm, we have no chance of sneaking in." Van Triet looked into the distance, a thoughtful glint in his eyes. The school's secret realm was tightly controlled. Then he'd have to use special means. He mentally calculated and immediately thought of bribing with the valuable skill books he'd taken. At the principal's private residence, when the man saw the rare purple quality skill books for the Langbat profession, he couldn't hide his surprise. "These are for me?" He cleared his throat a few times to compose himself, secretly thinking the kid Van Triet really had backing. But he kept a stern expression, "The school's secret realm can't be opened at will, I can't open a back door." After a pause, he added, "However, this secret realm has recently only been open to graduating students. Underclassmen don't meet the requirements. But if you're an outstanding special student, you can join the tour with a teacher's recommendation." With the principal's help, Van Triet finally set foot in the school's secret realm. He patted his shoulder and promised, "I'll do my best to help you get this spot." Around them, other students cheered excitedly, "This might be the last secret realm I'll ever enter, I'm going to grind as many monsters as I can." "That's right, if it weren't for the hero's gift, we wouldn't have this chance." "Thank you, hero." Unlike the crowd's excitement, Van Triet felt uneasy. He stared ahead with a premonition. Something about this secret realm felt off. The principal stood there enthusiastically introducing, "This is the hero secret realm donated to our school by the hero. Legend says the hero once fought here, there may still be traces." Behind him, Kyo-Chi stood silent, as if wanting to say something but holding back. He thought to himself, "Isn't the hero secret realm where the hero executed the traitor Kyoan?" Glancing at Van Triet, he hesitated, unsure whether to speak up. Suddenly, the principal pulled another male student close and warned, "But this secret realm's difficulty is low, so be careful." Then he turned to the student, "Q-Ta, you lead everyone." Q-Ta frowned and muttered irritably, "How am I supposed to level up then?" The principal patted his shoulder to comfort him, all right, no more complaints. The realm is open, go in. Even juniors get to come here." As they walked, Q-Ta glanced at Van Triet and Kyo-Chi, scowling, "What a pain, now I've got to carry 2 extra weights. You lot go in and stay behind me, don't cause trouble. If you die, that's on you." The secret realm opened and everyone entered without suspicion. Only Van Triet remained uneasy. How could a level 20 to 40 realm give him this feeling? He squinted, his gaze sharp as he questioned the rising sense of danger. Inside the hero's secret realm, the group passed through the main gate. Giant, jagged crystals surrounded them, glittering with majestic light. Someone walking ahead suddenly stopped, eyes fixed forward, exclaiming, "That is." Before him, the 2 girls Van Am and Van Sa had appeared as if from nowhere. He was surprised, why are Van Am and Van Sa here? Aren't they juniors? Another guy sneered at Van Triet and Kyo-Chi, "Look, those two underclassmen got in too. The other guy boasted arrogantly, if Van Saw and the others transfer here, that'd be great, take the girls out and get motivated. After saying that, his mouth curled as if daydreaming, drool nearly forming. Maybe I could still. Before he could continue fantasizing, an armored man stepped up and cut him off. Don't dream, those girls are definitely above 3rd year, we're asking them to lead us. The man added, don't even think about climbing higher. Hearing that, the conceited guy curled his lip and waved his hand. Alright, I was just joking. At that moment, footsteps rang out. He looked up to see who it was. Van Saw and Van Am unexpectedly walked straight toward Van Triet, startling the guy. But instead of approaching him, the two girls stopped in front of Van Triet. He was briefly stunned and thought to himself, this person was a guest at the Din household with some status, why seek me out? Does she know the original owner of this body, or does she want to speak on behalf of Din Hut? Contrary to that guess, Van Saw smiled gently and said, I saw you yesterday at the Memorial Museum. Your agility isn't bad, and your voice is quite distinctive. Van Triet was taken aback, wondering, is she just starting a conversation? As she finished speaking, Van Am's cold golden eyes drew near as if to pierce his soul. Her voice, mixed with a sound like shattering glass, rang out clearly. Van Triet widened his eyes in shock. He hadn't expected that after just 2 shouts yesterday, she would recognize him. Before he could speak, Van Saw turned, changed into a new outfit, smiled brightly, and waved. When she was done, she announced they would stop here for today. Behind her, Van Am also donned different armor, clenched a dagger, and beamed, let's go explore first. Van Saw's actions made Van Triet even more suspicious. She had recognized him but chose not to expose him before the crowd, instead using this approach to signal him. An image flashed in his mind of when Din Huk had once recognized his voice. As long as Din Huk didn't come looking in the short term, given his current leveling speed, he had nothing to worry about. With that thought, Van Triet kept his eyes on Van Saw and Van Am's movements. If they showed goodwill, he would reciprocate. He called out, be careful, there's a dangerous aura in this secret realm. Hearing that, the two girls turned their heads to look at him. Van Saw replied, now that you mention it, there really is a strange sensation here. At my rank I wouldn't normally pay attention, but thanks for the warning. The crowd around them buzzed in disbelief. Van Saw was known for being aloof, why was she being friendly with him? To find out the truth, they swarmed Van Triet, clamoring, hey, how do you know Van Saw? Are you two acquainted? Yeah, could you introduce her to us? But Van Triet himself was vague. He coldly raised a hand and replied, sorry, we have to go. Someone called out urgently, you planning to go solo? The weakest monsters here are level 20. 2 underclassmen like you could die if you run into one. Before they could finish, Tu Ta's face darkened. He raised a hand to cut them off, his voice icy, let them go. A strange light flashed in his eyes as he continued, having a connection to Van Saw isn't bad, so I assume their rank won't be low. The female student beside him remained worried and stammered, but Mr. Lai told us to be careful, is this really okay? Tu Ta cleared his throat, don't forget the real reason we're here. The less you know about that place the better. It's rare essence crystal, do you want to share it with them? Anyway, everyone has emergency signal guns, so don't worry about it. His words were hard, but deep down Tu Ta hid jealousy. How did a commoner get to know Van Saw? Thinking this, he glanced at Van Triet and Kyo Chi's retreating figures and thought to himself that if they overestimated themselves, they'd deserve whatever happened. Outside the secret realm entrance, only a few people remained silent. Suddenly Din Huk rushed over from nowhere, looking urgent as if something serious had happened. The teacher asked in surprise, you are Din Huk. Why are you here? Din Huk replied sternly, a team just went in, right? The teacher nodded, yes. Seeing the murderous look in Din Huk's eyes, the teacher asked in puzzlement, what do you intend to do? Din Huk recalled his conversation with his father. Van Triet, Kyo Chi. Don't blame them for what happened at the Memorial Museum. I don't have time to deal with these small matters now. Seeing his father didn't believe him, Din Huk angrily shouted, they were the ones who broke in. I recognized their voices. His father interrupted sternly, a Huk, an intruder who could slip away from me and so many guards couldn't be a student, how could students pull off something like this? Din Kwa interjected, at least you must prove those two can overpower the guards, otherwise I can't help argue your case. Din Dan reminded them, alright, we're discussing serious matters, don't interrupt. The more he thought about it, the angrier Din Huk became. He gritted his teeth, grabbed the other's collar, and growled, Van Triet and Kyo Chi have already gone in. I want into that secret realm too. Inside the realm, Van Triet unleashed a flurry of razor-sharp slashes at the stone humanoid monster. With a powerful strike, the level 20 Manhwa orb collapsed instantly. But no sooner had it fallen than another appeared, a level 30 Manhwa I orb, HP 1981,980ths, MP 280/280. It was much harder to deal with, blasting potent magic from the top of its head. Van Triet remained unfazed, his reflexes were lightning fast as he stepped back to dodge the attack. He shouted for Kyo Chi, who immediately responded. Shield of Light. Instantly, golden winged shields manifested around Van Triet. It cost 40 MP, lasted 3 minutes, forming a liquid barrier with 500 durability and 700 defense. Not stopping there, Kyo Chi let out an encouraging roar. A blaze of passion erupted, boosting Van Triet's strength, speed, and attack power by 5%. Agile and swift, Van Triet leapt onto the top of the monster, identified its weak point, and swung his blade hard. With a thunderous crack, the Manhwa I orb was cleaved in two, unable to react. System notification, Manhwa I star level 30 has died. Law-destroying blade, attack power increased by 70%, duration remaining 7 seconds. The system continued to display, you have leveled up. Character information. Name, Van Triet. Race, human. Level, 21. Class, incantation. HP, 670. MP, 140. Stamina, 11. Spirit power, 27. Strength, 6. Defense, 69. Agility, 27. Critical rate, 1.37%. MP recovery speed, 1.38 seconds. EXP, 47/400. Unassigned points, available. Not only Van Triet, Kyo Chi also leveled up. I leveled up too, another level gained. Character information, Kyo Chi, race human. Level 11, class shield bearer. HP 590, MP 120. Stamina 9, spirit power 4, strength 7, defense 19, agility 8. Critical rate 0.65%, MP recovery speed 1.92 seconds. EXP 24/2400, unassigned attribute points available. Van Triet looked at the system panel and thought to himself that the 2 skill books, Surrounding Shield, and Rallying Shout, taken from the Din residence were truly useful. With Kyo Chi's current level, learning them would fit perfectly. Even though the monsters here are strong, with Kyo Chi's support everything becomes much easier. The two continued deeper, and ahead appeared huge luminous crystal masses, growing densely like a strange forest. According to the teacher, this secret realm hides the rare wonder stone beasts. Killing one gives a chance to obtain the auxiliary skill, Gravity Pull Thunder. Van Triet muttered the skill list: Illusion Art, Invisibility Art, Dance Art, Poison Milk, all not activated, and Gravity Pull Thunder not learned either. But having read the skill list from the mirror world, he had identified which skill to prioritize. Not only wonder stone beasts, the secret realm also contained undead. Van Triet glanced around and murmured, wondering where those powerful fighters had died within the realm. Their souls likely drift near the battle sites, hopefully they could find some high-grade items. Just then, he was startled to see a gigantic creature appear at his feet. Its body was pieced from cracked stone, emitting a gloomy purple light that seemed to swallow space. Red veins like burning blood spread across its body, and 2 sharp horns jutted high. Not just one, countless others stood nearby as if guarding something. This was the Crystal Pillar Valley. To be sure, Van Triet and Kyo Chi quietly moved closer to observe. He wondered why so many elite wonder stones had gathered here. They even moved over 1,000 meters, far beyond the usual activity range. Are they wanderers? This species is rare, not fixed to a location, roaming the secret realms, their power far exceeding ordinary monsters. Thinking this, Van Triet immediately drew his weapon, his eyes flashed like fire, and he lunged downward without hesitation. In the past, when humans were weak, encountering wanderers meant being torn apart like paper. They even wandered outside the secret realms, causing countless horrific disasters. However, with danger came rich rewards. The experience and loot from them far surpassed ordinary monsters. For that reason, Van Triet resolved to confront them head-on. With a single slash, he tore through part of the creature's body. Facing such a powerful monster, he told himself he could only try once. Sure enough, landing a hit wasn't easy as its blood kept regenerating. Manhwa Wonderstone level 30, HP 18,31,980, MP 280/280. Van Triet was astonished, could it have a continuous healing skill? The Wonder Stones went berserk at the sight of him and simultaneously fired magical energy. He didn't stand there taking it. He kept jumping to dodge and activated surrounding shield to protect himself. But even with the shield, the terrifying speed of the elite monsters still let them land hits on him. Their attacks were rapid and dense. Before he could react, another strike sliced across his arm. At this pace, dodging everything was impossible. He hastily checked his status. Van Triet level 23, HP 242/720, MP 52/140. His HP and defense were too low. Without Kyo-Chi's shield, he'd be gravely wounded. To hold out, Van Triet summoned an undead to fight, but the situation didn't improve. Dry Bone Undead level 23, HP 1064/1820, MP 140/140. He cried out worriedly, "Not good, the undead can't hold either." Without hesitation, Van Triet turned and ran backward. Fortunately, the monster's movement speed was fairly slow. However, his HP and defense couldn't be raised immediately. To defeat these monsters, they would have to rely on Kyo-Chi after he leveled up. He stepped in front of him and said, "Come on, first follow me to farm the normal monsters and level up." In the low-level monster area, Kyo-Chi prepared to face a Manhwa Elite level 20, HP 1480/1480, MP 250/250. Van Triet stood behind, thinking that earlier from above he'd spotted many suitable monster locations for Kyo-Chi to train. In a party, the shield of the shield bearer is the key defensive line and can absorb up to 94% of damage. The protective helmet taken from the Din Guard gave Kyo-Chi enough defense to block strikes from level 20 monsters. While Kyo-Chi was still struggling, Van Triet shouted from behind, "Lower your center of gravity, stand firm." Following the instruction, Kyo-Chi immediately raised his shield toward the monster. As predicted, the shield's durability dropped to only 90%, saving an additional 4% compared to before. Kyo-Chi cried out with joy, but because he was distracted, the monster immediately countered, throwing a punch he couldn't block. Shield-bearer Kyo-Chi level 11, HP 410/590, MP 107/120. Van Triet yelled, "Watch out! Attack from the rear!" Without stopping, he rushed forward and slashed off the monster's arm. He coldly reminded, "Always be alert for the next strike and its range. No need to tense up too much, only brace when defending. Relax your body to conserve strength." Having said that, he pushed Kyo-Chi forward to continue the fight. "I'll support from the rear. As the shield bearer, you must always watch your teammates' movements." Hearing this, Kyo-Chi cast aside his fear, his gaze steadying. He smiled and replied, like that." The two coordinated smoothly, one raising the shield, the other attacking. When strength differences aren't too large, skill is the deciding factor. Time passed, and the monster corpses gradually piled up on the ground. System notification, you have leveled up. Character information, Van Triet, race human. Level 22, class incantation. HP 670, MP 140. Stamina 11, Spirit Power 30, Strength 6, Defense 69, Agility 27. Critical rate 1.37%, MP recovery speed 1.38 seconds. EXP 54/4600, unassigned attribute points available. Van Triet glanced at Kyo-Chi and saw him intently looking at his status panel. Now Kyo-Chi was confident enough to face foes directly. Thanks to shared experience, his leveling speed was very fast. Kyo-Chi cheered, "I've reached level 15. System display, Kyo-Chi, race human, level 15, Class Shield Bearer. HP 590, MP 140. Stamina 9, Spirit Power 4, Strength 7, Defense 19, Agility 8. Critical rate 0.71%, MP recovery speed 0.92 seconds. EXP 320/3200, unassigned attribute points available. Without hesitation, Kyochi took out the skill book and finally learned it. Skill book, Shield Armor Plate, equips an outer armor layer to the shield, increases durability by 400, defense power by 512, equal to 1/7 of user's own defense, rarity, rare. Costs 50 MP, requires Shield Bearer class, level 15. The skill was quickly activated. Van Triet thought to himself that the book taken from the Din residence was the last thing Kyochi could learn at this stage. With Shield Armor Plate, his shield was now strong enough to deal with the elite wanderers in Crystal Pillar Valley. At the same time, in Crystal Pillar Valley, 3 unfamiliar silhouettes appeared. "Why are there so many elite wanderers here?" one asked anxiously. "Where did they come from? This is too dangerous for students, we must deal with it immediately." They were Lei Elite level 33, Trang Chin level 37, and Loyan level 34, members of the professor's team. Loyan frowned. "We can handle normal level 30 monsters, but these elite wanderers." Before he finished, a brilliant flare shot straight into the sky, the student's distress signal. The 3 immediately stopped and looked toward the flare. "First rescue the students over there," Loyan said decisively, though still hesitant. "As for these wanderers, if students accidentally encounter them then..." Lei Elite nodded, "Right. As a precaution, I'll stay here." Trang Chin, full of vigor, reluctantly agreed, "Then Old Bok stays, if anything happens then." Before he could finish, Van Triet and Kyochi suddenly appeared and approached. "Shall we watch this area? The distress signal over there is definitely from the wanderers. If only the 2 of you go, I'm afraid it's not enough." Trang Chin was stunned and blurted, "You too." Van Triet continued calmly, "The wanderers aren't fast, and they haven't noticed us yet. As long as we observe from a distance there won't be a problem. You teachers can rest assured." The 3 professors considered for a moment then quickly departed. But Trang Chin warned, "Those monsters are extremely dangerous, do not act on your own." He emphasized, "Hide well, if you're discovered, you won't be able to escape." The corner of Van Triet's mouth twitched into a mysterious smile, his eyes cold as he whispered, "They won't be the ones who escape." After the 3 professors left, Van Triet immediately lunged down, swinging his blade in rapid succession, each strike accurately killing an elite monster. Their momentum remained fierce. One monster sprang up and fired magical energy straight at him. Kyochi did not hesitate, he raised his hand and shouted, "Surrounding shield. Shield Armor Plate." Even though the undead was encased by the armor layer, the elite monster's power was still overwhelming. A single blow shattered the defense and cleaved the undead in 2 with ease. While the monster was distracted, Van Triet slid around to the rear and unleashed a series of razor-sharp slashes. There was an explosion, the monster's body burst into pieces. Van Triet continued to deal with the remaining ones. System display, Manhwa Wonderstone level 30, HP 328/1980, MP 170/280. He thought to himself he was still short a bit of damage. Thanks to Kyochi's support, Van Triet's strength and defense increased significantly. He quickly defeated the remaining elite monster. From its corpse, a brilliant purple beam of light fell down. Van Triet slid forward. His sharp eyes scanned the surroundings, then he immediately resumed fighting. He muttered to himself that he'd defeated an elite wanderer and was now almost accustomed to this class. But compared to his previous life he was still far behind. He swung his blade, using a reversal skill to boost his attack, but his basic strikes were still too weak. He thought to himself that it would be great if he could improve his attack power. No sooner had the thought finished than the system announced, "Enemy defeated, level up." Van Triet rejoiced inwardly, elite wanderers indeed granted a lot of experience. The system prompted, "Please pick up dropped items." He stepped up to the shattered corpse, his eyes lighting up when he saw an item, a radiant purple sword flashing with lightning. He exclaimed, "An attack-boosting weapon." System display, long crystal blade, attack plus 552. A satisfied smirk crossed his lips. It perfectly compensated for his lacking attack. And from now on fighting would be much easier. Unfortunately, the skill book, Thunder Gravity Pull, he had hoped for did not drop. The drop rate was truly too low. He was still mumbling when suddenly a blazing red flare appeared in the sky, different from the earlier distress signal. He immediately recognized it as the distress signal location, but this time it was the special signal from the teacher's team. At the same time, near Trang Chin, the situation was extremely dire. He gritted his teeth, horror on his face, stammering, "This." They had been driven into a crystal stone ravine, surrounded outside by countless elite wanderers. Why are there so many wanderers here? The situation grew ever tenser. Groups were besieged from all sides with no escape. Not far away, on a large rock, Van Sa and Van Am were observing below. Van Sa frowned. "Too many monsters are gathering here. What on earth happened?" A man stepped forward and replied, "I'm not sure either. We just followed the signal to reinforce." He pointed down. The signal came from the cave. They must be trapped. He continued anxiously, "There are too many monsters. I'm afraid even the teacher's team can't handle them." Hearing this, Van Sa smiled, "This is my task." She waved her hand. A beam of light hovered in the air and then shattered into countless fragments. On the ground, a golden formation of the secret art Tin E appeared. With the support, everyone was enveloped in a strong energy, spirit power +2, attack power +20%. The crowd murmured, "This skill's effect is so high, it must be at least rare." Van Sa leapt into the air, swung at the elite wanderer and shouted, "Gravity drive." Immediately, massive boulders fell from above, pinning the monster and trapping it in a solid stone cage. Seizing the opportunity, Van Am wasted no time, activated a hidden technique, and unleashed a razor-sharp slash at the monster. Its status bar vanished instantly, signaling its death. Witnessing the scene, those nearby were stunned and buzzing, their eyes bright as if enlightened. "So strong. Now we can rescue those inside." People kept exclaiming, praising Van Am and Van Sa's reputations. Standing behind, Van Triet silently observed and evaluated inwardly. Not only their equipment but also their skills were top tier. He thought that even without him, this place probably wouldn't face trouble. However, a sudden uneasy feeling flashed through his mind. Something wasn't right. What had caused the wanderers to gather in such numbers? Van Triet turned to Kyo Chi and said decisively, "I'll go inside to take a look. You follow those people first." To clarify the situation, he activated the skill, Wandering in the Mirror, and stepped into the reversed world. System notification, Wandering in the Mirror, time remaining 29 minutes 59 seconds. Van Triet glanced around and murmured, "Glass is scattered across the ground, it's all mirrors. I can enter the mirror world at any time, but the mechanism to return to reality remains a mystery." The previous day, at the Din residence, when the time for Wandering in the Mirror ended, Van Triet had passed by a few standing figures but still couldn't return to reality. Before him, in the crystal stone cave, a few silhouettes flickered. Humans cast shadows, but the monsters did not. He wondered whether, aside from himself, every creature in the mirror world lacked a physical form. Venturing deeper into the crystal cave, Van Triet suddenly halted when he recognized a familiar figure. "It's them, this is Little Ta, right?" It seemed they had come here to lure the wanderers and then send a distress signal. Thanks to the narrow terrain, the monsters couldn't cause much danger for the moment, but he still wondered what in this cave had such strong attraction. Taking a few more steps, the faint green light from the surrounding rocks made it hard for him to determine direction. Suddenly his gaze stopped, and he exclaimed in astonishment, "They even have this here." Before him were not just ordinary glass shards but countless multicolored, glittering mineral deposits. Are these special glass minerals? No wonder those Little Ta folks risked entering this cave. From his knowledge, this kind of glass exists only in secret realms and is completely different from the outside world. Those of the life system can use them to craft unique equipment and accessories. Thinking so, he gently approached and touched a piece of glass that glowed with vivid green. These mineral deposits are worth more than 1,000 taels of gold. Suddenly a prompt appeared, mirror glass mineral can be collected and brought back to the real world. Yes or no? Van Triet froze and muttered, "Bring it back to the real world from here." To confirm, he boldly touched a large glass chunk. The system appeared again, "Bring back to the real world, yes or no?" A corner of his mouth lifted as he thought inwardly that, apparently, as long as he was in the mirror world he could still bring items back to reality. Without hesitation, he quickly collected all the special mineral deposits. This skill still held many mysteries to explore, but for now he needed to scout the place. He looked around and realized the quantity of mineral deposits here was unusually large. If fully mined, even an ordinary person could become a millionaire. No wonder the wanderers gathered in such numbers. At the same time, in the real world, the battle with the elite monsters raged on. Van Sa leapt up and cast Gravity Drive, pinning the monster to the ground. Van Am coordinated smoothly, swinging his sword in continuous strikes. Not stopping there, they also summoned Celestial Dance Technique, launching brilliant golden columns of light to the ground, prompting awe. Could all their skills be rare grade? Is their power really this great? One person gasped. They're much stronger than the teachers. Before such overwhelming power, the elite monsters were hacked to pieces, their bodies shattering like stones scattering. Little Ta ran over joyfully, exclaiming, "We're finally rescued. I thought we were going to die here." But before he could finish, Van Am cut in coldly, "Don't relax yet, we still have to fight our way out." Everyone had already expended a lot. Van Sa smiled faintly, more relaxed than before, but her eyes remained vigilant. Suddenly, the scene before her made her freeze, her eyes widened. Oh! The little Ta group paled, their gazes vacant, speechless. Around them, elite monsters swarmed in from nowhere, as numerous as ants, surrounding them from all sides, ready to annihilate everything. The crowd cried out in terror. Could it be that all the wanderers in this secret realm have gathered here? Back in the mirror world, Van Triet faced towering pillars of crystal glass blocking the path. Without hesitation, he swung his weapon, delivering sharp strikes that shattered the massive glass block. Stone and glass fragments rained down, opening a maze-like passage. Suddenly, a brilliant blue light flared up and shot into his eyes, causing his purple pupils to contract. He murmured, "Oh!" Right in the middle of the cave, a strange crystal nodule hovered, emitting a powerful, alluring energy. Van Triet stepped closer, eyes glued to the object, thinking to himself, could this be the hidden secret? If those mineral deposits are special products of the secret realm, then this core must be the sole treasure. He knew that a treasure core is the crystallization of special products, nurtured over a long time, so rare that ordinary people might never encounter one in a lifetime. He reached out and touched it, feeling the abundant energy. Joy flashed in his eyes and a faint smile appeared. Each treasure core carries its own unique power. System notification, Mirror Core, Rank, None, Type, Treasure Core, Unique Item. Upon use, Stamina plus 10, Mana Regeneration plus 0.5, reduces 20% damage from electrolyte element. This is a replica of the treasure core, Van Triet murmured in awe. It boosts base stats and reduces electrolyte damage by 20%. Percentage damage reduction is extremely rare, even top-tier gear seldom matches it. Increased stamina raises his health points, and the faster mana regen lets him cast Mystic Blade continuously. However, Van Triet still frowned, feeling puzzled. If a treasure core exists, normally the secret realm should house a monster far beyond the wanderers. So why are only the mineral deposits attracting them? Deciding to use the treasure core, he saw the system present a choice, use or collect. Using it or carrying the item out will consume 10 minutes of wandering in the mirror time. Yes or no? He exclaimed in surprise. Switching back to the real world, a horror struck them all pale and rigid. Van Am and Van Sa no longer looked as powerful as before. Anxiety filled their eyes. Before them, massive boulders were smashed by a gigantic creature, the ground trembling violently. The monster resembled an elite species, but its size was 10,000 times larger. A single step could crush everything. Is this, the leader of the wanderers? A hidden boss? Everyone was terrified. A Wanderer Lord is a rare hidden boss, stronger than ordinary realm bosses, far surpassing the strength of any teacher or student. The group froze. Aren't Wanderer Lords supposed to appear only in high-level secret realms? Why has one appeared here? Despair spread. If things continued like this, everyone would die. Amid the chaos, Van Sa remained calm and spoke decisively. Everyone stay calm. Coordinated escape is our top priority. From that mountain pass, we can leave the valley. If we can just get out, everyone will be safe. She immediately cast Tindu Secret Art, holding back nothing and exerting full force to clear the way in that direction. Another person immediately agreed, "That's right. At least get the students out." He led the way, unleashing a flurry of attacks. Meanwhile, the Wanderer Lord swung its massive arm toward them. The group coordinated, launching a barrage of skills to stop it. A gigantic battle shield appeared, glowing with 5 points of light, blocking the boss's attack. Energy beams from the monsters were also intercepted. "Not far now," everyone shouted. But at that moment, the Wanderer Lord roared and used Battle Howl, Muster. In the blink of an eye, countless small monsters of colors ranging from green to red appeared, surrounding them completely. The crowd panicked. Where did so many monsters come from? The boss continued to cast Crystal Radiance Orb, increasing all monsters' HP, attack, and defense by 20%. The monsters immediately pierced through the battle shield. "The damage is too high, health can't keep up." Panicked cries rang out, "Help me." Seeing their teacher fall before them, the group fell into despair. He's dead." They couldn't hesitate any longer. Van Saw decisively ordered, "Shield bearers, move up. Cleric, prioritize healing the shield holders." She silently assessed the situation, heavy at heart. The group was exhausted and barely holding on, while the Wanderer Lord had yet to unleash its full power. At this rate, they could not break the encirclement. Seeing the dire situation, someone in the group used stealth and quietly slipped away from the horde, seeking an escape route. 36 stratagems, running is best. But the teacher immediately shouted, "Those with the Wanderer title, do not follow his example. You don't have enough hidden movement time to escape." No sooner had he finished speaking than a blinding light flared. The Wanderer Lord began its attack. "Watch out," the teacher yelled. But that light engulfed the runner, turning him to ash. The situation grew ever tenser. The small monsters simultaneously increased their strength, and they even caused the mountain pass to collapse. "This attack power is terrifying, we can't get out," someone cried in desperation. The boss calmly continued to charge up its move, preparing to sweep the entire group away. "We're done for, it's about to rush us, we can't stop it." At that moment, two ultimate skills appeared. Giant Shield and Rock Mount Shield. System notification, Giant Shield, Rock Mount Shield level 70, type, Shield, epic quality. Defense plus 3000, core resistance plus 80. Shields forged from stone turtle shell, self-adjusting to the wearer's body. The two shields stood firm against the Wanderer Lord strike. "Everyone get behind the shields quickly," the girls signaled urgently. "Those with high strength, come hold them. If the shields fall, we're done." Although level 70 equipment with reliable durability, no one was of sufficient rank to equip them, making moving the shields difficult. They could only delay the attack temporarily. Suddenly a student cried in shock, "Why does the school's secret realm have monsters like this?" "It's all because of you, why else would we be here?" The group began arguing, suspecting one another. Were all previous efforts to save them in vain? The teacher felt sad, but suddenly thought at least those two kids were likely safe. Images of Van Trick and Kyo Chi flashed in his mind. The teacher startled, Didn't I tell you two to wait in the valley? Why are you here?" The teacher shouted urgently, "Be careful." At the same time, a shield surrounding the shield bearer was summoned. System report, status 33, 257/2070, 31/160. The surrounding defenses had been broken. No one remained strong enough to stop the wanderers. Watching the student use the shield to withstand the boss's blow, the teacher was astonished. Was this boy really that strong? But the guards' shields had all shattered, their defenses ruined, with no way to retreat. A barrage of power beams shot out in all directions. Trang Chin's eyes widened in shock. Just as a figure appeared. "Kyo Chi, you did well." Kyo Chi replied in surprise. "Van, try it, leave the back to me." The personal interface kept spitting out notifications, level UPS, rank increases, character data glowing in a corner of the screen. Name, Van, try it, race, human. Breakthrough level milestone 33, profession, support. Accompanied by a terrifying surge in physical stats. Witnessing the miracle, Kyo Chi was stunned, dropped his weapon, and murmured in awe, "Van Try it truly is very strong." Standing nearby, Van Saw also exclaimed in disbelief, he alone could defeat such a monstrous creature. Following the celebration, dozens of high-quality items poured out from the boss's corpse. He squinted to inspect. Unable to contain his inner cheer, a legendary grade item dropped. And there were two of them. Before the joy could fully blossom, a violent tremor surged from the ground, sending his body staggering wildly through the air. The cause of this earth-shattering collapse was nothing other than the remnants of the giant golem's corpse. Below, teammates' piercing warnings rang out, the monster's about to fall. Van Triet is still up there, be careful. Relying on agile reflexes, Van Triet, like a leopard, immediately leapt away from the spot before the ground collapsed. Landing steadily, he frowned and carefully evaluated the newly cracked cliff face. His gaze pierced the dust haze, and he was shocked to realize the interior structure of the mountain was completely hollow. Tipping his toes, Van Triet sprang down onto a jutting ledge and peered into the darkness. Below lay piled bodies of wandering monsters and countless rotten human remains. He assessed silently. It seemed this place long ago gave rise to a wanderer lord even stronger than this one. Because of the presence of such a horrifying creature, the area bore the scars of a brutal battlefield. Suddenly Van Triet's pupils contracted, sharply locking onto a shadow concealed in the distance. That figure was Kyo-en Bon Bon had truly died. A cold shiver ran down his spine, leaving him stunned. Looking up at the jagged mountain peak, a colossal stone statue loomed, a warrior pressing a great sword straight down into the ground in a mysterious pose. The shocking sight made everyone around draw a cold breath. They stared in disbelief, recognizing this as the traitor Kyo-en. Van Triet clenched his fists, his mind roiling. Although he had heard this place was where the hero Din Khan carried out executions, he had never imagined it would be like this. The horrific traces of devastation before them were definitely not the aftermath of a one-sided purge. This was clearly bloody ruins left after an earth-shaking death match between countless monsters and humans. That proud statue exuded a majestic, awe-inspiring aura, utterly unlike the cowardly traitor displayed in modern history museums. From that arrogant stance alone, it was clear this person was no meek soul to be trampled. In the suffocating silence, Kyo-chi suddenly clenched his fists and, choking up, said, "You may not believe me, but I think my great-grandfather, Tang Zhu, was not a heinous criminal." Kyo-chi's eyes brimmed with tears, his voice carried a bitter edge yet remained resolute. "Since childhood I've read about Tang Zhu's history. Whenever the records reached specific accounts of him, they were always described vaguely. But I still managed to find some details. That he always entered secret realms beyond his appropriate level." He swept his gaze over the crowd, voice full of challenge. "Tell me, why would someone of S rank, a level 60 profession, go into such low-level secret realms?" Before anyone could answer, Kyo-chi gave his own reply, voice laden with long-suppressed anguish. "Because this is a secret realm capable of nurturing a Wanderer Lord." The atmosphere seemed to freeze as the youth revealed the brutal truth. The Wanderer Lord was the source of the catastrophe, able to summon monsters from across the entire secret realm into the outside world. Therefore, the authorities simply did not have enough forces to defend against the flood of monsters. He drew a deep breath and lifted his head proudly. "That is why strong, responsible professionals must periodically enter these secret realms to destroy the monsters. And my great-grandfather was such a man. He came here to snuff out the disaster at its source." The earth-shattering revelation left everyone present so stunned they were speechless. Seeing their shocked expressions, Kyo-chi's mouth twitched, his crooked smile bore crushing bitterness. "Perhaps you think I'm making this up, right? Even my relatives say I'm just seeking psychological comfort and interpreting those texts that way." Standing to the side, Van Triet decisively stepped forward. He slapped Van Chi's trembling shoulder firmly, and in a deep, steady voice affirmed, "I believe you." This bold act of support left the crowd momentarily dumbfounded. Kyo-chi also froze, eyes wide, his heart tightening. He had not expected Van Triet truly to believe that Kyo-en was not that sort of person. With his eyelids half closed, countless fond memories of fighting side by side with Kyo-en flooded Van Triet's mind. He recalled that kid's arrogant posture, "I don't need anyone called a master." With a smug smile, "With my talent, I'll surpass you soon. Old man like you might as well retire early." Then there were times of miserable struggle, screaming, "Master, save me." But immediately afterward he'd bluster, "Who needs you to save me? I just didn't expect so many monsters in this secret realm." Van Triet also remembered clearly Kyo-en secretly hiding his injuries. "You caught me. Yes, I'm the type who quietly works hard behind the scenes and then brags in front of others. Don't worry, the next secret realm won't be life-threatening." He also recalled that question from years ago, why did you choose the sword guard profession to advance? Isn't that the weakest development path for shield users? And his friend's confident explanation, isn't it because you pretty much only focus on strength and speed? You always charge straight ahead. No shield class can keep up with you. Those familiar voices still echoed in his ears. Old friend, I finally found you. The image of him grimacing when punished reappeared. I know, leaving the team without permission costs 3 months' pay. I had to act because there were so many wanderers and I couldn't help rescuing people. Ah, never mind. The recollection ended and Van Triet returned to the present. His chest swelled with an indescribable ache. He ground his teeth and made a cold vow, Bon Bon, for you. I will definitely find the Ding family and settle this. Cut to a luxurious mansion in the real world. After hearing the report, the Ding patriarch slammed the table and shouted skeptically, is what you're saying true? Bruised and battered from a severe beating, Ding Huck whimpered and tattled to his father. It's true. If you don't believe me, ask the teacher in charge of that secret realm. That Van Triet is that formidable. I was blocked at the gate by the teacher guarding the secret realm and not allowed to enter. He recalled the guard's resolute face, we really couldn't let you in. Your rank is still too low. He continued recounting the whispers of the hunters who had just escaped, did you see that earlier? Of course. From a distance I saw that Wanderer Lord collapse. With such a commotion, who wouldn't notice? It's likely been killed by that person. An old veteran hunter stroked his chin in admiration, truly impressive. That's a rare hidden boss, above level 40. Being able to subdue it is beyond my imagination. The rumor spread, and attention focused on one name, that person is called Van Triet, right? The nearby students couldn't hide their surprise. I thought Van Sa and his group were already powerful. I didn't expect someone among the students to be that strong. What's that kid's background, anyway? After hearing Ding Huck's entire furious report, the Ding Patriarch, filled with murderous intent, leaped up and ordered the elite guard summoned, come with me to capture the traitor. Just as he was about to step toward the secret realm, he remembered something and halted. His eyes narrowed cunningly, wait. You said that Q's kid went along too? Then take the Q family's person with you as well. Back in the secret realm, the system notification popped up. A dazzling item appeared before Van Triet. Skill book, golden light barrier. Level requirement, none. Type, special skill book. Rarity, legendary. Without blinking, he casually placed the precious book into Kyo Chi's hands and said nonchalantly, you learn it, it has no rank requirement. The obedient youth nodded, yes. Witnessing this, throwing money away, gesture, Van Sa nearly toppled and cried out in alarm. That's a legendary skill. You're just giving it to someone. Ignoring her incredulous expression, Van Triet shrugged, this is a skill specialized for shield users, I can't learn it either. He looked meaningfully at Kyo Chi and added, this is the skill your great-grandfather often used, it's this one. Kyo Chi clutched the book tightly, voice choking, yes. Hearing that trembling reply, Van Sa could only smile helplessly. Her gaze toward Van Triet grew a few degrees more admiring. But indeed, he was not lacking in powerful skills. Technically my skills are all advanced, but compared to his they're still far inferior. Whether it's skills that suddenly disappear or those that can summon so many undead. Van Sa's inadvertent exclamation struck Van Triet like a lightning bolt, jolting him to remember his ragtag disciples. His mind scrambled to piece the fragments together. Of course, the undead I summon all come from transformed souls. Apart from me, other souls would also enter the mirror world. At the thought of that, a cold sweat trickled down Van Triet's brow. He held his breath and decisively pressed the interface icon. The mirror world skill has been refreshed. Journeying within the mirror, time remaining, 29 minutes 59 seconds. His pupils flickered violently as he muttered, can I use it? Van Triet stared up in bewilderment, his eyes fixed on the stone statue atop the peak with complicated emotion, where a face all too familiar, Bon Bon, was carved. Just then, a female guard approached respectfully and whispered to pull Van Sa back to reality, we should go, you still have an audience ceremony later. The reminder made the young woman sigh, her pretty face showing clear disappointment, we really can't stay longer. This is obviously more interesting. She scanned the battlefield but couldn't spot him and mumbled irritably, "What is Van Triet doing? Why did he disappear for so long without showing up?" At the same time, everyone else was frantically searching. Deep within the deathly space of the mirror world, Van Triet stood motionless, facing the figure of his old friend. He said bitterly, "Bon Bon. I didn't expect we'd meet again. There are so many things I want to tell you, but sadly." Before he finished, a surge of black resentment rolled out and enveloped Kyo-en's body, spreading across him. The once hero was forced into a bloodthirsty rage. A flash of extreme sorrow crossed Van Triet's eyes. "You can't answer. So you've become a wraith, but I don't want to strike you." Facing the frenzied attacks, the once human Kyo-en's instincts drove Van Triet to retreat step by step. When his back hit the wall with no escape, he completely dropped his defenses and allowed the vortex of violent moves to swallow him. Immediately, Van Triet's consciousness was dragged into Kyo-en's fragmented, hazy memories. Scenes flashed through his mind, exposing the whole tragedy, what Bon Bon had endured, including the gift chip that Din Khan had given him. Seeing the enemy's arrogant posture in the memory, Van Triet frowned in discomfort, 80 sparking in his head. Why did that stance feel so familiar? Crack! The memory glass shattered into thousands of pieces, violently yanking Van Triet's consciousness back to the real battlefield. Dizzy and staggering, he was at a loss, confused about what had just happened. He lowered his voice and whispered, holding a faint hope, "Bon Bon." What answered him were only the beast's savage roars from its chest. Even so, Van Triet didn't want to give up. Bon Bon. Under the storm of attacks, he gritted his teeth and dodged Kyo-en's strikes. His mind quickly analyzed that the opponent was driven only by combat instinct. With no other option, he had to withdraw. But at that moment the system interface flashed red with a warning, "Cannot leave the mirror world." Van Triet's brows knit tightly. "Can't leave." With no escape, he slowly exhaled. His gaze grew cold. "Looks like I have to charge forward." The scene shifts back to Kyo-chi at the entrance of the secret realm. As soon as he stepped out, the Ding family's aggressive men surrounded him and jeered, "Oh, why are you alone? Where's that Van Triet? Oh, he must have seen us and ran away, right? That cuts our fun in half." Facing the sharp taunts, Kyo-chi's expression darkened. He asked irritably, "Ding Huck, what are you doing here? Are you here to level up too?" Ding, the patriarch, smirked and stepped forward, his hand disgustingly smoothing his sleeve. "Stop pretending, kid from the Kyo family. Didn't you and Van Triet sneaking into my house to steal?" Falsely accused, Kyo-chi flusteredly protested, "I didn't." "You're mistaken." Despite his denials, the group remained unmoved. The old Ding snorted coldly, "You think I can't recognize your shout?" The baseless word stunned Kyo-chi. He had nothing to say. He waved his hand smugly, his tone falsely magnanimous, "Actually, those matters don't matter, because I've brought you a gift." As he finished, he beckoned. From behind the guards, a line of people in tattered clothes were dragged out. Kyo-chi's pupils contracted, horror washed over him as he realized, his entire family was there. His grandfather, grandmother, uncles, aunts, and even his poor mother. The painful scene continued. His grandfather suddenly strained his neck and shouted in the most ignoble manner, then collapsed to his knees. "You beast, apologize to the heroic clan, and apologize to young Master Ding Hut." Contrary to his usual submission, Kyo-chi refused to yield this time, standing motionless. He defiantly met his grandfather's eyes, "Grandpa. I don't want to." This defiance enraged the old man further. He ground out each word, "When you were young, what did I teach you? How are you supposed to behave toward the Ding family?" Unable to hold back, Kyo-chi shouted back, tearing through the air, "Must the Kyo family forever be the Ding family's dogs?" The words struck like thunder, leaving the whole family stunned and staring at him in silence. Under the cold stares of the Ding men, his uncle panicked and prostrated himself, uttering groveling words, "Yes, we are descendants of that wicked traitor. To be allowed to be dogs is already lucky." His aunt wept, voice trembling as she pleaded, "Do you want to ruin the whole family? Think of your parents. Your mother worked so hard to support the family, and your father." Each word felt like salt in his wounds. Kyo-chi gritted his teeth, voice shaking but determined, "Everyone, look at what's behind me. He stretched out his hand and pointed into the distance, choking up. Our great-grandfather came to this secret realm to deal with the calamity. He clearly sacrificed himself because he was attacked by too many at once. The youth's eyes burned with an unquenchable hope. I tried before to find proof about our great-grandfather, but it wasn't enough. But now, the evidence is right before us. Our great-grandfather was not a traitor. The truth is completely different from their propaganda. Once the truth is revealed, his honor will be cleared. We don't need to live like this anymore. The Ding family has no right to treat us this way. Our family doesn't deserve this. The youth's rising momentum made the Ding patriarch laugh with pleasure. Ha ha ha, childish as it is, you're not wrong. The smile on his face grew increasingly cruel. Yes, everything you said is true. Your great-grandfather Kyoan was indeed ambushed and killed. He wasn't exactly a monster either. He paused, his eyes showing blatant shamelessness. To be clearer, my great-grandfather prospered because he ambushed Kyoan. The man's face revealed utter baseness. But, he curled his lip in a cold smile, who cares? Kyoan is still a traitor to the empire. He is still an evil man. What if I kill your crazy father? What if I kill all of them? The descendants of traitors like you are contemptible by nature. Suddenly, he waved his hand and pointed directly at Kyo-chi's trembling relatives. Actually, all these family members of yours know everything. Otherwise, how do you think those people you reported died? After unloading his cruel insults, he leisurely intoned an order like a monarch, kneel. The weak resistance quickly collapsed. Kyo-chi's entire family obediently dropped to their knees at his feet. His gaunt mother wept, crying out in grief. Chi! I'm begging you, admit you were wrong, don't resist, it's useless. I truly can't lose my son, after your father went mad. I can't bear it. Kyo-chi's heart twisted as he remembered his gentle mother who once held him and comforted him. Chi, don't mind those people. You're the best, you're the best. Time and oppression had aged her and worn her down. Witnessing that tragedy, Ding Huck burst into loud laughter, stepped forward, coiled his leg as if to kick him straight in the face. Still not learned. Whether you kneel or not, you will kneel. But Kyo-chi suddenly reached out and caught the blow, gathered his strength and yanked the man's leg, then hurled Ding Huck toward a pile of stones without hesitation. His voice rang out decisively, I won't kneel anymore. Lying sprawling on the ground, Ding Huck fumed in rage and growled, some progress at least. He immediately summoned a weapon and lunged madly forward. You dare lay a hand on me? I'll show you what it's like to be a punching bag. But the moment the blade was about to strike, he was knocked backward by Kyo-chi. The man staggered, stunned by the ferocious force. How did this happen? Stepping over the scattered rubble, Kyo-chi's cold voice echoed, Mother, we are the descendants of heroes. Giving his opponent no time to react, he unleashed a flurry of blows, striking Ding Huck's face like thunder. The Ding patriarch standing aside furrowed his brow, eyes wide as he stared at his favored son clutching his bloodied face, muttering in shock. How could this be? How could this, even you suddenly become strong? Ding Huck struggled more and more desperately. He lunged in a furious attack, but each strike was lightly evaded by Kyo-chi. Helplessness erupted into a wailing cry full of resentment. You're clearly just a punching bag. From childhood you've only been a punching bag. On what basis? Ending the farce, Kyo-chi gathered all his strength and threw a decisive uppercut. Ding Huck collapsed to the ground before everyone's eyes. Right in front of his family, Kyo-chi stood there, trampling his enemy. His gaze shot like a bullet at the cruel old man, and with proud finality he declared, I'm not who I used to be. Across the space between the two worlds, on the black and void battlefield in the mirror world, Van Triet was still pouring out his strength to withstand the brutal strikes of the vengeful spirit Kyoan. He retreated while silently assessing his enemy's strength. This was Bon Bon's full power form, and he was far weaker than him at the moment. If he weren't a defensive class vocation and lacked consciousness, he would probably have been overwhelmed in an instant. Exploiting a small opening, he slipped into counterattack, quickly mapping out his approach in his head. All the opponent's combat techniques had been taught by him, so he knew every weakness. However, the moment his sword touched the rigid armor, Van Triet had to grit his teeth in frustration. After all, that was a defensive force at post-class level over 60, even stacking magical blades likely wouldn't deal much damage. A moment later, as Kyoan released his concealment ultimate. Van Triet immediately recognized the legendary skill, Golden Light Barrier. He clicked his tongue in irritation. What a nuisance. He then plunged into a life-and-death fight with the opponent, not forgetting to hurl an insult at whoever was controlling Kyoan, "You mongrel." With that, he gathered his power to unleash the Dung Shan Chaotic Finger, determined to fight the spirits to the end. On the other side, Q-Chi kept raining iron-hard punches down on Ding Huk. Even though the opponent had collapsed to the ground, he did not stop in his rage. Seeing that, Ding Huk's uncle could no longer contain himself. He coldly acted, Huk, now you can't even beat that Kyo brat. Want me to help you scratch its itch?" Saying that, he lunged toward Q-Chi at terrifying speed. However, just as he was about to reach him, an invisible force pushed him back in surprise. That was the power of the Golden Light Barrier. Q-Chi roared proudly, "Stand out there and watch. All that talk of clan heroes is just cowardly braggarts, they don't dare single fight." Meanwhile, at Van Triet's side, he was still expending all his strength to withstand the relentless onslaught from the spirits. Remember that the Golden Light Barrier is a legendary tier skill, so its defensive capability is completely independent of the user's stats. As long as it doesn't take a single strike exceeding twice its tolerance, it can withstand at least 10 consecutive attacks. However, it is also a skill that consumes energy per turn. Even the slightest damage erodes this protection. When its energy is depleted, accumulating 10 hits of any kind can completely break the barrier. Back with Kyo-Chi, after a frenzied burst of attacks, the old man finally shattered his defensive layer. He sneered triumphantly, "You little mongrel, so what if you have the Golden Light Barrier? That trash Kyoan used, I don't even bother to respect it." Immediately after, he swiftly grabbed Ding Huk as a human shield. Kyo-Chi shouted loudly, "If my great-grandfather were still here, you'd only know how to kneel and beg for mercy." Those words infuriated him further. He instantly used a powerful aura to shove Kyo-Chi away. He sneered with contempt, "Rely on some useless corpse who died in a low-level secret realm? Even if he came, he'd have to kneel." With that, the old man executed the gravity ambush technique, causing the ground beneath to crack open and disrupting the flow of energy within Kyo-Chi's body, forcing him to suffer internal injuries to the point of coughing up blood. He looked at the scene with disdain. "Oh, you're quite resilient. But wait until I cut off both your legs, let's see how you'll stand then." Just as the killing blow was about to fall, his mother panicked and rushed out to shield her son. She dropped to her knees, sobbing and begging. Third Patriarch, Kyo-Chi is still young and doesn't understand. Please spare him. I'm kneeling before you, do with me as you wish. Seeing that vulnerability, he put on a sly smile and issued a threat. "Oh, then here's the deal. Little brat, if you don't kneel I'll cut your mother down." "Never mind, there are plenty of people I can cut." He raised his hand, and Kyo-Chi's resolve began to waver. He trembled and blurted out, "Wait, I." But the merciless old man did not hesitate and delivered a decisive strike. Kyo-Chi could only stare wide-eyed at the thick cloud of dust before him. His relatives and those nearby were so terrified their limbs went weak. However, instead of triumph, his uncle's face suddenly turned to sheer terror. You are Kyoan." The appearance stunned the mother, the clan elder, and everyone present. The crowd began to murmur, "Kyoan is alive. Impossible, how can the dead come back to life? That form, looks more like an undead spirit." Amid the chaos, a very familiar voice rang out from where Van Triet was hiding. "You all insulted him so much before, so now he can't crawl up from hell to settle scores with you." Seeing the false Kyoan, the uncle burst into loud laughter. "What fake gods and demons is this?" Van Triet happily responded by continuously empowering the purple spirit. A string of system notifications appeared. You have equipped iron armor, you have equipped shield armor, you have activated guardian aura, you have used population shield. This blessing forced the Ding family to struggle to defend themselves. No matter how they surrounded and attacked, they couldn't inflict a single scratch on the purple spirit Kyoan. Kyo-Chi's grandfather watched with his mouth agape in astonishment. "So strong, is that really Kyoan?" Even Kyo-Chi uttered in shock. With that ability, the interception technique could block multiple guards at once, truly astonishing. By contrast, the uncle remained unconcerned, pointing at Van Triet in hiding and challenging. "This is the spirit you summoned, right? My family used to summon tons of this trash. Level 3-3 wannabe and you compare? Kyo-en's spirit is nothing but salted fish. With that, he immediately charged in to attack. But he was ensnared by the purple spirit's sticky attack, rendering the weapon in his hand useless. With no choice, he discarded his weapon and fought barehanded. When the moment ripened, he used a close combat maneuver to collide forcefully with the purple spirit, confidently declaring, under absolute power, everything is junk. However, just as victory seemed at hand, he was knocked back by the golden light barrier. Van Triet thought to himself, even if Bon Bon becomes an undead, it's only an S-rank undead. No matter how strong the golden light barrier is, it will only keep him busy for a while. With coordinated attacks, they can drain all its energy. But when he looked back, the uncle found the newly hired lackey surrounded by Van Triet's other undead, with no escape route at all. He had to pull out the old armor from the storeroom and muttered, a bit troublesome. Kyo-en or the purple spirit, it's all the same, just a bunch of summons. He activated his inner blaze to boost his attack, and charged straight toward Van Triet's hiding place. With a 1,000-pound punch, if I kill the summoner, you, the summoned will naturally vanish. With all the high-end gear you inherited, let's see how long you last. But in the very first clash, Van Triet easily dodged the blow, and even followed with a deep claw across the old man's shoulder. He shouted in shock, "What's going on? How can he be unharmed?" The old man frantically used his paralysis claw, but Van Triet vanished instantly. While the old man was still bewildered, thinking he had disappeared, Van Triet appeared behind him and drove his sword down decisively. Terrified, the old man dispersed his chi to push Van Triet away. He immediately ordered the purple spirit Bon Bon to coordinate an attack. On command, it drew its sword and charged forward, forming a 2-on-1 pincer with Van Triet. In the blink of an eye, the uncle's body was heavily ravaged. He stood there taking the blows, cursing non-stop, "Fuck your." Van Triet's fury erupted, and he lunged in, slashing wildly, splitting the old man's arm in two. The man screamed in pain, "My hand, damn you! Priest, heal me! Restore my HP!" Suddenly, Van Triet appeared right in front of him before he knew it. Terrified, the old man hurriedly used gravity ambush to flee. "Get out!" But Van Triet appeared beside him once more, smirking with sarcasm, "Well? Scared yet?" The uncle's face had gone deathly pale as he tried to call for help. "Priest, why aren't you healing me?" Unfortunately, the priest on his side had long been devoured by Van Triet's undead. Van Triet laughed at his opponent's despair. "You still think my undead have the same strength they did when they were in your house?" He immediately used the heretical twin form, greatly boosting both offense and defense, dealing continuous damage to the surrounding area. Under the blessing of the legendary skill, his power far exceeded the guard's ability to resist. An item dropped, causing the uncle to panic in fear, and he could only turn and flee. Of course Van Triet would never let him escape. Every exit was sealed by him. He walked over at leisure and activated his Sword Guard class exclusive skill, the Shield Sword Absolute Formation. "Below S rank, no one can get out. You can try if you want." Cornered, the old man pulled out his last card to threaten, "Don't come any closer. In my hand is a void bomb. This is an S-rank item my father gave me. If it explodes, with your HP, you're as good as dead." Van Triet remained unruffled and taunted, "Let it explode." The uncle stared blankly, "You want to die?" He sneered, "With my blood, even if it explodes I can survive. Even if it kills Bon Bon, I can resurrect him." Instantly he appeared behind the old man, "And you can't make it detonate on me." Saying that, Van Triet decisively chopped off the old man's remaining arm, causing the bomb to fall to the ground. Then he forced the old man to kneel prostrate, in front of everyone, including Ding Huck, who had gone pale. He calmly pressed his sword to the man's neck and asked coldly, "Do you still think you have any worth?" Cut to Van Triet in his normal form, inventorying loot from the old man's storeroom. There were many valuable items, including hundreds of life potions that restore 100 HP over 10 seconds. He evaluated them mentally, but given the potion's recovery rate, even if Kyo-en used them then it would be insignificant. Looking at the purple spirit Kyo-en, he realized there was no avoiding death for him. After finishing up, he captured the soul of the dead man into the mirror world, turning him into a new undead. He nodded with satisfaction, just as predicted. Killing is the fastest way to add high-rank undead. Then he looked at Ding Huck and decided to spare his life. "I'll keep this guy alive for now. He may prove useful later." At that moment, Kyo-chi's grandfather couldn't stop praising Van Triet's spirit. "So young and already this strong. was this boy guiding Chi? Though he saw Chi had matured, the death of the Ding family's third patriarch made him anxious about the future. He said, "What will we do from now on? The third patriarch is dead, Ding family will surely seek revenge. We're doomed this time. This young man may be strong, but against the heroes there's absolutely no survival chance. The hero who killed the ancestor 15 years ago is surely even stronger now." Van Triet eavesdropped on this conversation and had to admit to himself, "Right. If what happened here leaks, I won't have much time left to grind levels. I need to level up faster to handle that Ding Con." Immediately the system's sound announced he had leveled up. He was surprised. "Leveled up by myself? Looks like sending the undead to farm monsters works too." Based on the undead's current strength, they could easily sweep this secret realm. However, this place no longer has enough resources for him to level up quickly. A more important goal now is to find the realm lord of the secret realm. He calculated, unlike that wandering hidden boss, the secret realm's lord is the core of the whole place. Kill it and the entire realm is considered fully conquered. He judged the entrance was being guarded by the teacher and people from the Ding family. The only way to get the Kyo family out safely is to end the secret realm so it automatically collapses. Then the chaos would be their chance to leave without the Ding family discovering third patriarch Ding's death. Just then, the system announced he had leveled up and successfully defeated the secret realm's lord. The surroundings began to blur, the sign of dissolution. Van Triet stepped forward to reassure everyone, "I killed the secret realm lord. The realm is about to vanish, there will definitely be chaos. With third patriarch Ding mysteriously missing, the Ding family won't react quickly." He added, "Once everyone uses the chaos to leave, there won't be danger for a short time. But if there's an investigation and they're forced to question people, just pin it all on me." Immediately after, a new notification appeared saying he received a secret realm soul stone and 5,000 mirror world skill experience. It turned out that to upgrade the mirror world to level 3 he needed to hunt a realm lord. He believed this upgrade would help narrow the gap with Ding Con. At another private secret realm, the guards were lazily complaining, "Do we really have to be this serious? Who would dare stick their head into this private realm? Let's just play cards on the sly." Van Triet slipped inside at that moment, making one guard startle. "Why do I feel like someone's behind me? Must be my imagination." To Van Triet, these private realms with low-level guards had absolutely no defensive capability. He slid past each gate with determination. Almost. I'm about to send that Ding Con to the afterlife." He frantically swept through monsters, his level rising continuously after each realm lord he killed. He reminded himself, only calmness prevents mistakes. Stay calm. News that a string of private secret realms had been covertly seized began spreading in the press, forcing the Public Security Bureau to open an investigation. Kyo-chi's grandfather read the news and couldn't help but suspect, was this done by Van Triet? So many realms suddenly conquered, it's definitely related to that realm we went to before. If so, the Ding family will be drawn to him. He did this for us, otherwise we surely wouldn't have escaped. Everyone in the house was deeply moved and relieved by his actions. This place was days away from the Ding residence and very secluded, hard to cover up without leaving traces. He actually found us here, we don't need to worry anymore. That's right. Finally safe, we've probably escaped the Ding family. Suddenly, a huge explosion rocked the area, sending rocks flying. A menacing voice thundered, "You think you can escape us? You think we'll just tail that criminal and let him slip away? Where's that Van Triet? Even if you have no ties to the criminal, just daring to run from the Ding family warrants a visit. Besides, you're underestimating the hero clan. Not to mention those traitors with delusions, his whereabouts have already been tracked down." Meanwhile, at a hero's secret realm, Van Triet, whose power had advanced dramatically, was glaring into the distance. "Ding Con, I'm coming for you." He analyzed the situation. Private secret realms were no longer yielding much benefit, while the high-level secret realms were being guarded strictly by the military. With the current 200 m detection radius, he couldn't sneak in unnoticed, so he had to seek Van Saw's help. Van Saw, seeing him stare, teased, "So you called me out here because you want me to lead you in? I can't do that. I don't know how much you understand my status, but even I couldn't get in without a pass." But he produced a travel pass that left her stunned. "You prepared this early? However, temporary passes require someone to escort you to avoid inspection. So you plan to circle around the Ding family and still not be detected entering this realm?" Why is that? Van Triet, with an innocent look, recounted, last time you were in that traitor realm you also saw Kyo-en's corpse. If Kyo-en isn't as villainous as the propaganda says, then the previous betrayal incident likely has hidden complexities. I want to help my friend, help the Kyo family clear their shame, and get a hero to confront this openly. Van family didn't believe him, she exposed. Do you think I'm an idiot? You'd risk offending the hero clan just for some kid like Kyo-chi. Put that aside, you already snuck into the Ding residence earlier. Did you somehow predict Kyo-en's situation and steal the travel pass in advance? Also, not long ago Third Patriarch Ding and that traitor realm were caused by you and Kyo-chi, but then you vanished, and haven't been found since. Could you be connected to that traitor Van Triet? He showed no fear and even smiled faintly in reply. Isn't your surname Van as well? Could you also be involved with the traitor Van Triet? She responded a bit irritably, I'm not involved in those other things, and actually my surname isn't Van, I just changed it to avoid being disturbed. Van Triet teased relentlessly, you know my real surname is Van. Aren't you afraid I'll expose you as an old woman? You're not acting like someone begging. Do you think I'd report directly to the military? Then you're as good as dead. Van Sa said this while bringing the pass close to her neck. Van Triet fell silent, then smiled smugly. I trust you wouldn't do that. I trust that someone inside a secret realm who risks exposure to defend a student wouldn't side with the Ding family. He stepped closer and produced a notebook, diaries stolen from the Ding family. You can see how many evil deeds the hero's descendants committed. Van Sa took it. Though frightened, she still tried to appear tough. Then you miscalculated, I don't care about those things. Instead you, who seemed so composed, easily handed your life over to someone else. So naive, you've probably never been betrayed, have you? Van Triet laughed, his eyes briefly hollow. Betrayed? He continued, whether it happened or not, so what? I won't let that stop me from trusting others. I even believe your nature isn't bad. Van Sa stepped back to retort. You don't look like a good person. Then she turned her back. If you really trust me that much, come with me and see if I betray you halfway and expose you. In truth she hurried away because she felt awkward being seen as virtuous. When they arrived, the gatekeeper warmly greeted Miss Van Exe. The hero had been waiting for them for days. Upstairs had instructed that Miss Van Exe may enter directly. The guard's gaze swept around, he assessed cautiously and then probed. Why aren't you accompanying the Ding family's young master? The young master just entered the realm. Is that cloaked person your bodyguard? It's not that I distrust you, but the young master said his temporary pass was stolen upon entry, so we must be extremely careful. At this, Van laughed brightly. She tossed her chin, her eyes full of mockery fixed on him. If you're not doubting me, then what is this? An interrogation? Her sharp words immediately made the gatekeeper break into a sweat and stammer out an explanation. Of course not, mainly we received information that the criminal at the realm gate has recently been moving toward the hero realm. Van couldn't help but chuckle, her coquettish eyes flicking subtly toward Van Triet standing motionless beside her. Even so, the guard persisted in nagging with a loyal expression. We're just following regulations for your safety. What if the bodyguard was swapped? Seeing him stubbornly intent on investigating, Van Exe suddenly smiled cunningly. She stepped closer, affectionately took Van Triet's arm, teasing, fine, let them inspect. She even playfully pinched his cheek, then spun around abruptly and glared sharply at the gatekeeper. So you think I don't recognize my own bodyguard? Maybe I plan to replace him, or do you want to search me too? The murderous aura from the noble daughter instantly silenced the guard. Cold sweat poured as he hurriedly bowed and pleaded. I wouldn't dare, if Miss Van is certain, then there's no mistake. Please enter. Smiling triumphantly, Van Sa strode past him, the haughty bearing of a heiress on full display. Enter. As he crossed the boundary into the secret realm, Van Triet silently judged that the backing behind this girl was indeed deep and unfathomable. Lost in thought, Van Exe's calm voice suddenly sounded in his ear. Based on your trust, I'll lead you in this time. After that do as you please, but that's it, my backing won't intervene further. He nodded slightly, eyes showing sincere gratitude, thanks. Immediately after, a surge of black energy swelled and a jet-black Tuli spirit appeared at his gesture. Van Triet calmly instructed, you take it with you. Whatever I do behind, they won't suspect you anymore. With that he faded and vanished into the void. Van Xa crossed her arms, snorted lightly, prideful, so you actually have some conscience left. Cut to the mirror world. Van Triet stroked the system interface with his finger, the corner of his mouth twitching as he murmured schemingly, finally I can use it. The mirror world's abilities after upgrading to level 3. A series of mechanical system notifications flashed. You have activated mirror world level 3, expanding the anchoring area of the realm field. Glancing around, he noticed packs of beastmen dispersing across the wasteland. His keen mind clicked. Mirror World Level 3 can replicate secret realm monsters from the real world. As the monsters charged wildly, Van Triet remained unflustered, coldly swinging his hand to unleash dark techniques, dispatching each one neatly. While cleaning up the aftermath, he smugly outlined a plan. From now on he could farm monsters freely in the mirror world without worrying about detection. In an instant his body shattered into shards of light, performing a perfect blink outwards. The system announced again, you have left the mirror world. Although his true form had departed, the smile on his lips grew brighter as he plotted further. Even if he left the mirror world, the Tuli spirits could remain there and grind levels for him. In the meantime, he could scout the surroundings first. From the high vantage point, what struck Van Triet's eyes was a massive, towering structure. He was secretly astonished, they'd even built an entire castle inside the secret realm. Using his analytical mind, he pieced together the facts from the Ding family's journal. This was where Ding Khan resided. I know too little about him. I only know that 15 years ago he reached S rank, then afterward he seemingly never displayed his true power in public. Not even third patriarch Ding knows. With more detailed intel, confronting him would be far more certain to succeed. According to my previous life, everyone who reached S rank was known, yet he suddenly appeared out of nowhere. He glanced at the silent figure beside him and asked softly, Bon Bon, do you know who he is? But in response there was only a blank, soulless form. Van Triet sighed lightly, a flicker of disappointment rising in him. Still nothing. Clearly, since the mirror world upgraded, the intelligence of the Tuli spirit troops has improved significantly. The system board even once announced that Bon Bon's strength had been enhanced the most, but that still wasn't enough to awaken his communication abilities. In his heart he still nursed a thin hope, perhaps if the mirror world continues to level up, Bon Bon will regain more consciousness. At the same time, deep beneath the imposing castle, cries of lament rose and whimpered. Father, you always spoil Third the most, you can't just sit idly by. Third's whereabouts remain unknown. According to So Chi-En's report, that criminal even dared to come near the hero's secret realm. Seated on the cold throne was Ding Khan, Van Triet's archenemy. The man below continued to wail, forcing Ding Khan to sit up irritably. The man kept nagging, capturing Third silently and suddenly, he may have reached S rank. For safety, I beg you to act, father. Of course, if you could obtain a promotion certificate then. Before he could finish, a bloodied arm ruthlessly pierced his abdomen, hoisting his large body into the air. Ding Khan growled with murderous intent, you're so old and can't even stop a kid, and you dare lecture me? The man coughed up a mouthful of inky black blood. Ding Khan frowned and sneered coldly, this brat only just touched S rank and received a promotion request. He couldn't even withstand one hit from me. It's a pity I have to keep a useless piece of trash like you. I left you to take care of my grandson, and instead you lost him and now expect me to clean up after you. As he mercilessly drained the son's life force, Ding Khan hissed each chilling word, do you know? Without Third I'm missing a family member and have lost years of my life, do you understand? Not far away, in Ding Nan's area, a vicious young scion of the clan, a brutal scene unfolded. He arrogantly rode on a servant's back as if it were a mount, driving hungry wolves to tear civilians apart for his amusement. He clapped and cheered, steal faster, hurry up and loot, if they're all eaten there's nothing left. The elder mage Tam Fook approached obsequiously and suggested, young master, your mount hasn't eaten meat in days. Exchanging glances, they grinned wickedly and continued their lively chatter. Hidden in the nearby shadows, Van Triet took in every crime within his sight. He grit his teeth, furious in judgment. Compared to this place, the Ding family outside the secret realm is extremely restrained, so repulsive they barely show it. Suddenly, a murderous aura flared skyward right beside him. The Tuli spirit Kyoan was radiating fierce flames of anger. Van Triet's heart tightened, he choked back his tears and thought silently, Bon Bon, even in this state you still want to save people like that? Faint memories of those harsh days surged back. Among the disaster camp children, at first he and Lankan were the kindest and strongest. The image of little Kyo-an always standing with outstretched arms to protect the weak appeared vividly. He recalled the noble's shouts from back then, "A slave like you dares to steal the master's food? Where did this little brat come from? Get out." Van Triet half closed his eyes, remembering the vow he made when he took them in. "That's why I took you as my students and trained you. I hope that when you grow stronger you can help others." His voice choked with bitterness, "But in the end it was me who harmed you, turning you into this." Suddenly, as if provoked by Van Triet's pleading, the Tuli spirit Kyo-an emitted broken, staccato sounds. He opened his eyes wide in surprise. "Bon Bon, you." His trembling hand touched his brother's shoulder. "You have consciousness." Through clenched teeth, Kyo-an uttered two words filled with hatred, "Ding Khan." The deduction flashed through Van Triet's mind like lightning. He froze, his pupils constricting violently. Lon Kan is Ding Khan. Back in the main hall, Ding Khan leisurely wiped the fresh blood from his hand with a silk handkerchief. Squinting, pondering with a cruel delight. "Van Triet, did you deliberately use that name to provoke me? I didn't expect after so many years to hear that name again. Let's see who dares to impersonate you, beloved master."